Hello and welcome to Downtime Podcast, episode 145. Today is a very special Sidecast episode. Sidequest, sorry, not Sidecast, Sidequest episode. And I have brought with me, back from last week, DJ B. What's up, man?
What's up? Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, dude, we had so much fun last time. I just wanted you to come back on.
Yeah.
This kind of was something I was going to tack on to the last podcast, but I felt like this was something that is a lot bigger and should be talked about at length for like its own separate podcast. And I made it a side quest because I don't think it directly ties into video games as a whole. But to get into the topic, and for those that are watching or have probably already seen, the name of this podcast is called Sidequest Japan. And that is because today we're going to be talking about Japan and kind of like what got us into like Japanese culture, anime, food, all that stuff. When I first met you, DJB, one of the things we bonded over was we had both gone to Japan at some point.
Yeah.
So, I want to get into our experiences going to Japan for the first time, and I just want to like talk about how there's a lot of misconceptions with like Americans and Japanese culture, because a lot of people think that going to Japan is expensive, where it's actually not. In my experience, like buying a plane ticket is the most expensive part. Well, okay, I take that back. There are a lot of things you can do in Japan that are pretty expensive, but the most expensive part of my trips that I usually take are the plane ticket.
Okay.
That being said, I feel like there's a lot of like cheaper things you can do. Like if you want to get sushi, you can go to like the turntable sushi places instead of going to the gourmet sushi places.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I remember going to one in Shinjuku that was probably still, in my opinion, one of the best I've ever been like that. And it was actually like reasonably priced, which was such a a great thing about it.
Is that the one with the game? Is that the one where you like play a game on the pad?
No, I doubt it was. Keep in mind, when I was in Japan, it was like 2010, so it might have not even been like around back then.
Oh,
Or I don't know,
okay.
maybe, but no, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't like some unique experience type. It was just a very middle of the road type, like traditional, like conveyor belt type sushi place, but it was legit, man.
Yeah, those are the best places, to be honest. And not all the time will you go to a place and be like, I think I'm gonna get the best food ever here, because I've been disappointed sometimes, and in some cases, like the best places that I've been to don't have a menu in English, to say the least.
Oh man.
I'm not talking about like Jiro Dreams of Sushi levels. It's like a little bit
Right.
lower than that.
Right.
So before we talk more about our experiences in Japan, I wanted to ask you, like, how influenced were you by Japanese culture when you were growing up? So, like TV shows, toys, games, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I share a lot of similar interests with my cousin Steven, and he always accredits me for his interest in Japanese culture and like anime in general and video games and stuff like that. And I like, to me that's kind of surprising because like when, especially when he's younger, he was like full on weeb status, you know.
Oh, okay.
Um, but see, the thing is, I was never like that. Like I liked anime here and there. I play, I just like video games and stuff. And I gave him like my old Dragon Ball Z posters. I guess, and that's where he like gets that from, where he says, "Oh, it was me that got him into all that stuff." But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Like I did like a lot of the anime that would be, but see, like back when I was younger, there wasn't a lot of anime available. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like the ones that they actually had brought to the West, you know, and I just watched the dubbed versions on TV. And so that was like, but I loved those shows. You know, it was something different. I loved the different aspect of it, and I loved seeing like how um different culture other than Western culture influences that genre. And so there was that I grew up with. So you know, and then of course the video games. I'm a huge JRPG fan,
Mm.
always been ever since I became a gamer, pretty much. Um, so yeah, and JRPGs have so much personality, so much. There's a lot of influence um, that you can tell when you're playing through a JRPG. And there's actually this really great series that I watch made by Kotaku. It's called like Lost in Translation, and they kind of juxtapose like the English translation of a Final Fantasy game with the Japanese version, and you know, certain things that there's a context that might be missing, um, and that's fascinating to me. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where a lot of my influence comes from. Oh, and around the time I went to Japan, I also like watched some Asian dramas and listened to a lot of Japanese music. So like Japanese pop and
Dude.
Japanese rock. So
Oh my God. Okay. We have very, very similar, very similar, what's it called? Not upbringings, but like influences, or like we were influenced very similarly growing up.
sure.
So for me, it was when I was really, really young. My dad had an NES and a Sega Genesis, and he basically gave it to my brother and I. I can proudly say that my brother and I have kept it until today. We still have it. It's actually underneath our TV. It's just collecting dust,
Wow.
sadly, because there's no cables right now that I have that can hook it up to a modern TV. Um, but we grew up playing the NES, the Genesis, and we eventually got the N64 and the Dreamcast. So we still continue with like the Nintendo, Sega console until the Dreamcast ultimately died, and was phased out. And then we got a PlayStation 2, we got a GameCube, and I ended up owning a PS4. So I've always had like Japanese consoles. I've never owned like an American console in my whole life, and I didn't realize that until like I was in college. I was like, wow, I really like Japanese consoles and like the games that they make, because they're just so unique, especially Nintendo. Um, and on top of that, I watched a lot of like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, Beyblade, Zoids, One Piece, like on 4Kids. These are all the dubbed versions. And kind of tying Pokemon back into what you mentioned about like seeing everything in like a Western perspective and seeing it dubbed. A really good example is in Pokemon, there's a scene where Brock pulls out onigiri, which is like the rice ball, and he's like, I think I'm gonna eat a jelly donut. And I'm like, that does not look like a fucking jelly donut, dude. And so for a lot of Western kids seeing that, they're like, wow, that doesn't look like a jelly donut, but I guess that little thing is filled with jelly, so that's why he's eating it. But for the dubbing company, they were like, well, kids don't understand that this is a rice ball, and a lot of American kids don't eat rice, so we're going to call it a jelly donut. And if you look at that now, you're like, wow, that was kind of stupid of them, but they had the right mindset back then, you know? But of course, I didn't think it was a jelly donut, because, you know, to me, donuts are round, and they're covered with sprinkles. So,
Yeah,
I digress. But I was also, like you, influenced by a lot of dramas and movies, and then there were even references to Japanese culture, like in the movie Back to the Future Part 3, where Doc Brown is working on the DeLorean in the cave, and he's like, look at this, it says it's made in Japan, and Marty takes it, and he's like, what are you talking about, Doc? All the best stuff's made in Japan. Because, like, you know, Doc Brown was from the 50s, Marty was from the 80s, and Marty knew that Japan was huge, and Japan had such an influence on technology and cars back in that
right.
time period, that, you know, Japan was the king of electronics, basically. So yeah, I mean, I was like, why Japan is pretty cool, but why? And then movies like James Bond's You Only Live Twice really, like, you know, introduced me to a lot of like some of the stuff that they ate despite some of the really bad things that they show in that movie. Like there's a part where he literally has yellow face. I'm like, bruh, that wouldn't fly nowadays. But yeah, and then in 2006, I was introduced to Naruto, the subtitled version. My dad's coworker had a bunch of like burned DVDs of Naruto, and he showed us, and I was hooked immediately. I loved Naruto. I still do, but not as much as I did back then. I was like almost weeb level. I wouldn't say that because I didn't want to learn Japanese. I was like more into, well, I guess weeb is someone who just doesn't really care about the language. They're just like, oh, the subs are better than the dubs. I didn't really think that, since I was just like, whatever.
Sure.
It's funny because I mentioned Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, all those games, all those shows, and I was actually against anime. I was like kind of an anime hater because my cousins were really into it. I'm like, that's not cool. I'm into American shows like Pokemon. I was so fucking hypocrite.
Really?
And I didn't know it. Oh my god! Looking back, I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with me? And yeah, I mean, over time, I grew to appreciate it more, and I eventually watched Naruto, was hooked. I was a weeb. I was definitely a weeb, and eventually I watched a drama called Densha Otoko. Have you ever heard of this drama?
No.
It's called Train Man. It's about a guy who is an otaku, and he does all these otaku things every day, and he's like a super nerd, but he knows that, like, you know, there's a little part of him that wants to experience a little bit more in life than just anime and video games. So eventually there's like this drunk guy on the train, and he's like harassing this really beautiful girl, and Train Man goes and he saves the girl from the drunk guy, and the girl and Train Man eventually get together and they fall in love. This might sound just like a drama, but actually this is based on a real life event that happened. Not like an in-person thing. It's more of like, it was a story on 2chan. That's like the Japanese version of 4chan, the one that came before it. And right. Yeah, whether or not the story was true, but apparently it had there were some people that figured out who he was, but they couldn't say who because it's anonymous. But there was a whole thread, there was a whole story about Train Man, and he was the one typing like, hey, today guys, I did this, or today she sent me a package. And yeah, it was a true story that turned into a novel and a manga, and eventually a live action TV show and a live action movie. And it's pretty cool that there's a movie version that directly ties into the TV show and vice versa. So I think that was interesting. And then my dad introduced me to that show, and that's kind of the show that pushed me in the direction that I wanted to actually visit Japan. And yeah, that's pretty much it until I went to college, when I was introduced to a bunch of friends who spoke Japanese, and they encouraged me to go to Japan. So that will directly tie into my story about going to Japan for the first time. But for you, DJ B, what made you go to Japan in 2010?
Good question. Well, yeah, again, like I guess all those influences when I was younger kind of just culminated into that interest. Yeah, I guess because you mentioned how like all the mentality that all the best stuff comes from Japan. Like I definitely had that from a very young age. You know, I mean, now that I think about it, you know, like Power Rangers, I was huge into when I was younger,
Oh,
and
yeah.
obviously that was influenced by, you know, that we pretty much the best parts of Power Rangers came from the Japanese version.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Kimberly didn't come from the Japanese version, but anyway. But what else? Yeah, so I think it was around the time that I had this travel bug. I was living in Sydney, Australia for a year, and I had just come back, and I kind of wanted, to travel a bit more and see different parts of the world, because it was cool to experience a different culture when I was in Sydney, and I'd been to Europe before that, and I wanted to go somewhere in Asia, and I knew my cousin was a huge weeb, as I mentioned, and so I brought that idea up to him, and I was like, hey, he was graduating high school, or he had just graduated high school, so maybe this would be a great, like, a trip to do, uh and his parents were totally down to, like, fund that trip as his graduation gift.
Whoa.
And so, yeah. And so we were like, all right, let's do it then. And yeah, and that's pretty much why it kind of just came together for us. And yeah, just getting ready for that, and absorbing all the I tried to learn as much Japanese as I could in the short time frame that I had, and also just, like, getting hyped by familiarizing myself with more of the culture.
Do you,
So,
do you remember any Japanese?
oh God.
I'm not asking you to say anything right now. I'm just wondering if you do.
A little bit,
Oh,
just
okay,
here and
okay.
there. I definitely have not used much of it since.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I remember learning a few choice phrases. I kind of was relying on my cousin a bit more, because he was the weeb and I wasn't. When it came to, like, learning or speaking Japanese and stuff like that, and also I guess uh I was a little ignorant to the uh the fact that I would need to know more when I got there. Um
Hmm.
so but I tried to pick it up as quickly as I could, just a few choice phrases that were important to know.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned that. When I went to Japan for the first time in 2013, I didn't know any Japanese at all. I knew, like, some
Really?
basic words, like some just, like, hello, thank you, goodbye. But I didn't know any, like, specific situational words or phrases. Um, and I actually was not supposed to go to Japan the year that I went, and I was so disappointed that I was not going to South Korea, because I in high school the Japan weeb phase wore off in my freshman year, and I got more into K-pop, like Korean dramas and
Well,
Korean.
who wasn't getting into K-pop at that time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like Korean dramas, Korean music. Like, I was, like, super into it. I had a bunch of, like, girl group posters on my walls, and I really, really wanted to go to South Korea. Um, but there was a missile scare that happened where North Korea shot a missile into the sea, and my parents were afraid for me to go. And this is in college. So in high school, I started really getting into K-pop, and then it wasn't until college when I was at, like, peak K-pop phase, and I was like, all right, 2013 summer, I'm going to Korea. I had made a bunch of friends that were Korean from college, so they were like, yeah, come out here. We'll meet up with you. We'll show you around. We'll hang out. And I was like, that's so fucking cool. I can't wait to go. Um, and I already had places in mind. I had a whole itinerary booked. I was ready to go. Then the missile thing happened, and my parents were like, you're not gonna go." And I was like, "What?" So I texted my friends in Korea, and I was like, "Hey, is it okay if I still go? Like, is this really that bad?" They're like, "This happens all the time. You'll be fine." And my parents are like, "No, it's gonna be worse." And I was like, "What? How? What?" They literally said it was fine, and I was so distraught. I had to, like, I didn't make any, like, bookings or anything, but I had to, like, scrap all of that. And I was like, I still want to go somewhere. And they said, okay, well, what if you go to Japan? And I was like, well, I only have, like, 3 friends I know in Japan. They're like, well, it's okay. Like, it's still gonna be fun. And I was like, but Japan is just as close to North Korea, like, there's
That's true.
they're not that far. Like, they're like, well, we think you'll be safer there. And I was like, oh my god, this is so stupid. And I couldn't argue with them anymore. And so I bought a plane ticket to Japan. I made a bunch of bookings. I contacted the 3 people I knew in Japan, and I went. And to this day, I've never been to South Korea. I've always been to Japan. I feel bad because I really should have gone. I honestly felt like I should have gone to South Korea, and I still do, but for different reasons now, you know.
Let's go, bro. You and me, we'll go to South Korea.
I'm so fucking down. Oh my god, you're hyping me up, dude. You're hyping me up. Oh my god. Dude, I'm down.
Because I'm the same way. I've always wanted to go to South Korea as well. I just, I've never had the opportunity to, unfortunately. But, I've been to the airport, but that obviously doesn't count.
Me too. I've been to Incheon Airport.
Yeah.
That's my favorite airport. One, because everything is pretty cheap, and two, there's no password for the Wi-Fi at the airport. Because South Korea has like the fastest internet in the world and the most connected country in the world. So I was like, okay, this airport lives up to all of that.
Nice.
But yeah, dude, I really want to go to South Korea. I'm so down to go with you, man. Like that sounds like it's gonna be a fun time. And yeah, I've lost touch with all my friends from back then, so I literally know no one in South Korea. And I would be lost. I used to like study Korean more than Japanese, and I knew a lot of words. To this day I forgot most of it except for like hello, thank you, and how much is this? And can I get a discount? Okay.
I was actually the same way. I was learning Korean, and I actually kind of went harder on trying to learn Korean over because there was a point when I was trying to learn multiple languages, and Japanese was one of them, but Korean I guess I liked the most. I think I like the rhythm of the language, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So yeah. And I guess that's probably why K-pop, or part of why K-pop is it's so appreciated internationally, especially in the West. I think maybe it's just because like the rhythm of the language lends more to the music, possibly. But yeah, I think I'm about the same. That's all I really remember. Oh, I remember how to say Mekju Chuseo.
What is that?
Which is please give me a beer.
Oh,
when you're at a restaurant.
Oh, okay, man. I gotta use that next time. Like I go to Korean barbecue or something. Okay, wow, that's useful to know.
I know, right?
It's very useful. Holy shit. Yeah. I mean, I don't regret not going to Japan back then because I've gone almost every year since that first time I went. So I think that also kind of hooked me on Japanese culture. Like that, I literally did a 180 from like loving like Korean stuff to like just being all about Japan after going there, because I had so many like I wouldn't say negative, but like misunderstood, preconceived notions about Japan, about like how it was expensive, how everyone was like super nice, how everything was super clean, how like Tokyo was more English speaking than the rest of the country. And I only knew about Japan from like movies, anime, manga. That's it. And then like maybe some travel documentaries. And then when I went there, I was like, holy shit, this is not what I knew it to be. Like it's like when you study for a test and you take the test, you're like, none of what I studied is on the test. Like, what the fuck? That's how I felt when I first went to Japan. Like it was insane. I remember getting out of the station. This is like in June. It was like so hot.
What year was this?
This was
your
like
first trip?
June 2013.
Okay.
So this is like after Japan was given notification for the 2020 Olympics.
Okay, yeah.
So they started building they started laying the groundwork for a lot of like infrastructure for the Olympics. And I remember leaving the station with all my luggage in Ikebukuro in Tokyo and going to my hotel, and I heard Hawaiian music. I love Hawaii so much. I have like a long history with like visiting Hawaii. I have a lot of family out there. My family, my immediate family, and I have gone like almost every year to Hawaii, especially when we were younger. So I immediately recognized some songs that were playing, and I was like, "What is going on?" I was like, kind of jet lagged. I stumbled out of the station. I looked, and there was a whole Hawaiian festival going on in front of the station. I was like, "What the fuck is happening right now?" Like, it was so weird. There was like hula dancers. There's food. I could smell spam. I was like, what is this? Like, this is so out of place. But the people in Japan love Hawaii as well, so it did make sense that there was a hula festival happening in the summer. But at the same time, I was so like jet lagged, bewildered, and confused that I just stood there for like a good 30 minutes, like taking video and pictures and just like, watching it. It was so cool. And yeah, that I went to my hotel after that, and it was a hotel with a bar. Do you know what a snack bar is?
Not in the Japanese sense, I don't think.
It's a bar where there's like a lady, she's called a mama or like a mama-san, and she'll like serve you like drinks. It's not like a maid cafe. It's more of like, you're here to get drunk or you're here to drink a lot. And so this hotel I went to was like a really like, it smelled of cigarettes. The room was reasonably sized, and there was a bar at the bottom run by the same lady that runs the hotel. It was like, okay, wow. Yeah, it was like a Western saloon almost. And yeah, that was like my first experience in a Japanese hotel. And I eventually left that one because that was only for one day, because the original hotel I booked was all the rooms were taken except for the day that I had booked, which was the next day. So I had to wait for that.
Okay.
Yeah, man. What year? Oh, no, sorry, not what year. You told me 2010. What month did you go with your cousin to Japan?
It was around Christmas time. So
wow.
It was in the winter. Yeah, it was really cold.
Oh, I bet.
But it was cool. One thing I learned about Japan is that apparently Christmas time is more of like a couple's holiday, at least as I understood it. So that's what some people would tell me, that like I would see a lot of couples out around like the Christmas exhibit areas and stuff. I think it was kind of like I think what happened was people had mentioned that like what they do is that they like to kind of get together around that season, like couples, because they just don't want to be single around the Christmas holiday. Yeah, kind of like how people feel towards Valentine's Day here in the States.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it was around Christmas time.
Okay. So was it snowing at all?
No, not really. It was just really windy and really cold.
Oh, okay. You were in Tokyo, I'm assuming?
Yes, just Tokyo. I was staying in the Shinjuku area.
Okay. Very nice. Yeah, some fun fact about Christmas time in Japan, it's not just about couples as well. One thing that is huge is KFC, and they advertise this like 25-piece bucket of chicken, and it's apparently like a really popular thing for families to have that during that time of the year. And
oh wow,
like, yeah, like to get it and then eat it together. I was like, wow, that is like marketing at its finest. To be honest, you have like one of the biggest American chicken companies just like, hey, guess what, if you want to have a real Christmas with your family, you're gonna buy our giant bucket of chicken and eat it together. So funny.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's crazy,
man. The world, everywhere in the world loves KFC. That's one thing, and everywhere you go.
Yeah, dude, honestly, and they all do it better, like just fast food in general, which is crazy.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I remember there are some exceptions. Like McDonald's, KFC are really, really good in other countries, especially Japan. But
very true.
I went to Taco Bell in Japan. I gotta say, I was extremely disappointed.
Oh, I would imagine so. I didn't even know there would be a Taco Bell in Japan. That's
yeah, there's like 2 in Tokyo.
Wow.
Yeah, and it it did kind of remind me of Taco Bell back in the U.S., but I don't know. I was just eating it. I just felt disappointed.
Well, in what way was it like different or disappointing? Because I guess because you know how like these fast food chains they kind of adjust their menu based on like the local tastes, right?
Yeah.
And what they like. So how would you adjust like a taco for Japanese tastes?
So that's the weird thing. They didn't really adjust it. Everything was the same. We got like two tacos and a quesadilla, and we started eating
Oh.
it, and I don't know, it just didn't taste the same. Like, it didn't taste like disgusting. It wasn't disgusting enough for me. It wasn't. It wasn't like bad enough for me. I don't know. It was like too healthy, almost. Not healthy is not a good way to put it. It was like, oh man, it wasn't processed enough. Everything felt like
Oh.
fresh and natural, and I didn't like it. And I was like, why? What's wrong with this Taco Bell? um, like it did taste very similarly to the Taco Bells you'll find in the United States, but I don't know. It just was different. I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it.
Well, maybe that's what was disappointing about it then, because when I just remember when I went to like the McDonald's in Japan, I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm tasting like like it's not the same as American McDonald's, and like I said, I was in Australia prior to going to Japan. It's like McDonald's in Australia is actually really good too,
Oh yeah,
but it's different, and it tasted different as well. But then you know, being in Japan and trying like certain menu items in Japan that were unique, I was like, you know, this is really cool. You know, it had even had like some Japanese flavors. I don't really know how to explain it exactly, but just kind of some of the sandwiches that they had. So so maybe that's what it was. It's just you were expecting something a little more different and unique, and instead you just got a slightly more disappointing version of the American food.
yeah. I think you're
American
right.
Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. And like, yeah, it just everything was similar. I think that's what caught me off guard too. I was like, it looks like I'm just eating Taco Bell from the U.S. I could go down the street, get Taco Bell, come back, and be like, "Hey, I'm in Taco Bell, Japan," because it looked the same. The only like there were some differences, like they had a melon soda because melon is like a very popular flavor in Japan,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I got that, and I was disappointed by that. I was like, "This is just melon soda." Yeah, but all the other fast food places like Moss Burger. Have you ever had Moss Burger?
I don't think so.
So some of the Japanese flavors you mentioned in Japan, Japanese McDonald's, like they have a teriyaki burger. They're doing that to compete with Moss Burger, because like Moss Burger is basically Japanese McDonald's, but in my opinion, it's a little bit better. Just because of like the thickness of the patty, the ingredients that they use. It's like a hybrid of In-N-Out and McDonald's, and McDonald's is trying to compete with them, so they have to offer their similar things but in their own style. So, yeah, fast food in Japan, especially if it's an American brand, is usually better than their American equivalent. In
Yeah,
my
I believe it.
in my opinion, yeah, and in your experience as well. Uh, but yeah, man, tell me more about your first time going to Japan. Like, what did you see? What did you do? Did you meet any cool people?
Well, yeah, see, I think that I'm a little envious of your experiences because when I went to Japan, uh and like I mentioned, it was 2010. And so a lot of the resources that are available even in the last like 10 years that have popped up, like traveling resources, phone apps that can help you get connected for, you know, tourists and stuff like that. That wasn't really available to me back then. Um, and honestly, like when I got to Japan, my phone didn't even work. You know, like
Mm.
the just the network and everything. It just wasn't working. So I had to buy like a SIM card, I believe,
Oh
in
wow.
Japan just to get that to work. Yeah, and so I didn't even have internet on my phone or anything. So you know, it was kind of like the Wild West of traveling, where I would I would be in my hotel room and I would just kind of have to map quest an itinerary in the morning, and then just try to do my best as to figure out how to do that the rest of the day. I got my cousin and I got lost a lot of times trying to navigate the train system there. Um, but yeah, like just finding certain restaurants and stuff like that was a little bit of a challenge. I didn't really know anybody, unfortunately, that kind of would help me, acclimate to going there. It was just kind of us just going and just winging it and figuring things out on our own, which was an adventure in and of itself, but it was also very challenging. Um, but yeah, but we still were able to hit on a lot of the cool things. I mean, you mentioned a maid cafe. We were at, I think we were in Akiba,
Nice,
and
nice.
and we went to a maid cafe because that was something my cousin really wanted to do.
Oh,
So that was interesting, an interesting experience. The food was not great, but
it was
I don't think
expensive and
people,
not good.
yeah, I don't think people go there for the food, honestly.
you're you're absolutely right.
But yeah, like in that maid cafe there was low key tentacle anime on the screens.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and I ordered what everyone says is what you're supposed to order. I ordered the omu rice or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And then and our maid, she it's funny because she was trying to speak to us in Japanese, and my cousin only knew like a little bit, and it was just this really like difficult translation situation going on where um she was asking me about the dish, and I wasn't sure. I couldn't really figure out what it was that she wanted, or maybe she wasn't figuring out what I wanted. I don't know, but uh she kept saying like um neko, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, you're
and
like, what
so
is
my
that?
cousin picked that up, and he's like,
Oh,
I think she's asking if you like cats. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Or I was like, hi, hi. so so
oh.
she so I guess what happened was she drew a picture of a cat on the plate with ketchup, uh, with the actual omelet, and then she wrote my name on the omelet with a heart. So, all right, that's cool, but
That's cute, man. That's
it
cute.
was random.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of weird though. You're like, oh, all right, that's cool.
Yeah, but that was cool. I mean, I I don't think I'd probably do that again, just because it was super expensive, and I also felt a little uncomfortable being there, even though it was fun, and I think it's like a cultural thing. But um oh gosh, what else did I do?
Wait,
Well, what's funny is how like you'll be walking in these big areas, and then someone will approach you, like a maid typically might approach you,
yeah,
and then they'll try to lead you to their restaurant.
yeah, right. They'll give you either like a tissue or they're like, oh, come this way, come this way. You're like, oh no.
Right. Yeah. And so and because like I had mentioned, we didn't really know anybody, like when people would approach us and try to like, being friendly to us and stuff like that, like, we kind of welcomed it. But then we realized, oh, they're trying to lead us to a business. And so and we would feel bad. I guess this is something that I always wondered, and like um and maybe you might be able to tell me, like
Hmm.
if we just decide to like not follow them, is that rude? Like would they feel bad? Would they feel upset if that were the case?
No, you shouldn't feel bad. You shouldn't feel bad, and don't think about what they feel. And it is perfectly normal to ignore them. Most people do. You're supposed to ignore them unless that's what you're looking for. Um, don't worry about their feelings. To them, you're just money coming in the door. You're just another person on the street. I too felt that way. Like I was getting all these tissues from all these people on the street. And I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm collecting all these tissues. And my friend, my Japanese friend was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm getting free tissue. And she's like, yeah, well, don't talk to them. Don't look at them. Don't talk to them. Just ignore it. You don't need the tissue. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's perfectly fine to just walk past it. It does, to us, it might be rude because we're like, oh, we actually want to like maybe say hi to them. But for the context of that part of their culture, like just, it's okay if you could just walk by and not say anything and don't follow them because yeah, they're just trying to get boots in the door.
Okay. So funny story about that. So my cousin and I, like I mentioned, we were in we were staying in Shinjuku, and then we had dinner at this place that was I guess already kabukicho.
Okay.
If you're familiar with the area.
I am, yes. Oh my god.
So we had dinner in kabukicho, and I don't know. Sometimes I think back and I'm like, did the owner of that restaurant like did people mark obvious tourists who dropped money at having dinner and whatnot? So so as soon as we left that restaurant, which is was a very expensive meal, I think it might have been like a mistake in our ordering. So the meal ended up being pretty pricey.
How much?
I think it came to about like $70. I forgot how much in yen, but I remember like doing the math in my head. It was like, oh, that was about $70 for just the two of us at the time.
Got it.
Yeah, and we were traveling on a budget, mind you. So that might be a normal dinner for some people, but for us, we were trying to stay under budget as much as possible. But anyway, so yeah, as soon as we left the restaurant, we got approached by a guy who was, I guess he must have been from Ghana or something, because we were chatting with him a bit.
Okay.
And he starts talking to us, and he's just saying like hello, and he must have already pegged us as tourists because he approached us in English.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's all like, hey guys, I know a place nearby, a really nice place, like where you can meet some people or whatever. I don't even know if he said that much, but yeah, but it was just nice to like converse with him because we didn't really know anybody. And so we were following him for a little bit, and we were just talking, and he's like, so do you guys have girlfriends, stuff like that. And we were both single at the time, so we're like, no, we're just here to chill, and so he was just teaching us a few Japanese phrases to learn if we wanted to talk to girls and stuff like that while we were still walking down the streets.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. He was a really nice guy, and then we started to notice that a lot of the crowds around were thinning out as we were walking, like as we turned a few corners here and there. And then it just started to look more and more sketchy.
Oh.
Right? The areas that we were going. And then my cousin, he's tapped me on the shoulder, and like he was trying to gesture me to be like, let's go, like something's not right.
Wait, so the guy was still leading you?
Yeah, he was still leading us, and we were still talking.
Okay.
Right. And I was like, chill. I was telling my cousin, just chill. I'm sure it's fine. Anyway, long story short, we end up at the place that he was directing us to, which was a brothel. I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kabukicho is basically the red light district of Tokyo.
Yes, and it's notoriously known for being operated by the Yakuza.
Right. Yes, exactly. So he tells us, yes, like this is it's trust me, it's a really nice place. We have a lot of tourists that come that partake of our business.
Oh God.
And so, there were a few guys that left the brothel as we were at the doorway. And so my cousin just chimes in, thinking we're going to get jumped, honestly, like, or something. And he's like, we don't have any money.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, don't worry, just come in and we can talk, and we can go to the bank later if that's what you want to do, or something like that.
Oh,
And so like I'm sitting here realizing, okay, the situation is probably like gone on for too long. So I just said, I'm sorry, my friend, but we gotta go. And so yeah, we just started walking away slowly, and he just kind of stood there staring for a minute, and I was like, oh no. But we got, so as we were walking away, we got approached by like other guys that were trying to direct us to their brothel, and like just flat out said, sex, come here, sex.
that sounds pretty normal for that area. Okay.
Sure, but like sometimes I wonder though. I felt bad for that guy for whatever reason, because we were talking about like the maids that were leading to cafes, and I was like, I wonder if I'm assuming he might have worked for the Yakuza or whatever.
Mm.
Like, do you think maybe he got reprimanded for that situation of like pulling us all the way over there just for us to like flat out refuse in the doorway? I don't know. I worry about like maybe we were being disrespectful, but also we had to watch for our safety and stuff like that. So
No, you definitely were not being disrespectful. No is no, and that guy didn't take the hint. And
sure, well, yeah.
Going back to your first part about it, I think maybe he did, because there's possibly a quota that he has to meet if he's working for the Yakuza, and if he doesn't meet that number to get people in the door or to like help that establishment make a certain amount of money by a certain time period, then then he's probably gonna get like, I don't know, like whipped or something. Who knows?
Flogged, yeah.
Yeah, slapped or punched in the face or
get a finger
something.
cut off. I don't know, but
that's scary, dude.
Yeah,
that's scary.
I mentioned that story to like somebody else.
I'm glad you came out okay.
I think what they told me is that like
from that situation,
they won't harm tourists in Kabukicho, so as to like not discourage that market, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
They don't want to like get the reputation that tourists are not welcome in partaking of the business that goes on in the red light district. So that's why like tourists are generally safe, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You just got to be careful still though, because like they could like drug you or stab you or try to take advantage of you in any way possible, because they're just trying to make money. They're just trying to get by too, but maybe not in the best way possible.
Sure.
Damn, man. So talking about the Yakuza really quick. This isn't really about an experience I had. It's more of like tying into video games. So I don't know if you've heard, but there's a series on the PS4. They're all released now. It's called the Yakuza series.
Right.
Have you ever played one of these games?
I played one of them. I forgot which one. I didn't really get too much into it. It was cool, I guess. It was just not really what I was feeling at the time. But yeah, I'm familiar with the series.
Yeah, I totally understand that. But I encourage you to revisit it. Yakuza 0 is my favorite of the bunch. It is actually one of the main reasons why this podcast was started in the first place. Because my friend and I that did it, Alyssa, I actually asked her to play Yakuza 0 because I was super in love with that game. And she started playing it. She loved it. She's like, we should talk about this to other people. And I was like, I don't know anyone else that has played this game. She's like, why don't we just make it into a podcast? And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, that game is the sole reason why this whole podcast exists, is because we both loved that game. But I encourage you to play it because it represents, the first one at least, 0, represents like an accurate depiction, I guess semi-accurate depiction of 1980s Japan. And it is literally the genesis of the overall story as a whole. So the people that developed it, Sega, specifically Ryuga Gotoku Studios, they take reference photos of the area. It mostly takes place in Kabukicho, and they accurately reflect a lot of like what's there, like certain businesses. and it changes over time because the games all take place in different eras and different time periods. So you'll see it change. You'll hear different sounds. What I really like about the games is that they look and sound like actual Japan to a certain extent. Just like you can literally just sit there and people watch and listen to like all the music that's playing from the different shops. You can you can like listen to like the crosslight sounds, like the stoplight noises, like the beeping that happens every few seconds, and people will cross the street. Especially during this time of COVID, 3 of the games were remastered and re-released on PS4, and I started playing them. I finally finished all of the games in the series, but these 3 felt particularly like impactful to me during this time because I was supposed to go to Japan this year, but could not ultimately due to COVID. And the Yakuza games were a way for me to be teleported to Japan because of how realistic it felt. Not really from a story perspective, but just from an open world walking around the city perspective. So
yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, if there's a chance that you can play the whole series, because literally Yakuza 0 through 6 are all on the PS4, I highly encourage you to play them. They're really good games to stream, I think, because there's a lot of comedy to them aside from the serious storylines. There's a lot of like a lot of the sub stuff is funny. It's an RPG as well, but not in like the traditional JRPG sense. It's more of like a brawler. And yeah, the like the little details from being able to buy drinks in every single vending machine to going to like a fast food restaurant and ordering like specific things on the menu. You can like play the crane game in arcades. You can play basically full arcade games that are emulated within that game. Yeah, if you want to go to Japan, I recommend the Yakuza games. And I know my co-host Alyssa would definitely agree that you should play these games.
Yeah, man. Actually, that sounds really good. I might just check them out. I think after Japan for me, like I watched the film Lost in Translation. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I think that, well, kind of hit some similar notes for me because like I had that similar experience where I didn't really know a lot of the people there, but I was able to like kind of just take in the sights and the sounds, and I think the cinematography in that film, and also just kind of like the mood of that film and the tone and everything, that kind of hit a lot of nostalgic notes for me. And I appreciate that film, even though I think that film gets criticized a little bit for not properly like portraying like Japanese culture or whatever. But yeah, no, I think just the cinematography was really gave a lot of nostalgia for me watching that film.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can see how after going to that place, you're like, wow, I went there, and you're kind of like living through that experience of watching someone else be there, even though it's, technically it's a movie and you can, watch it anytime you want. But yeah,
sure,
hitting those vibes is definitely, it's a different feeling, going back to the first part of your story where you mentioned how you had to get a phone basically, or no, you had to get a SIM card to have your phone work properly. I had like a flip phone at the time. Mind you, this is like before like smartphones were like everywhere. At least to me, it felt like a lot of people in my circle of friends still didn't have smartphones. Yeah. So I had like a little shitty flip phone. I also printed out maps because I didn't know where to go. And literally the day before I left, my mom was like, do you need a phone? And I was like, I'm actually going to rent one because I don't have a SIM card. I don't want to buy one specifically for this trip because I think it's too much money. I was still a college student, so I didn't have much. And my mom was like, okay, do you want to borrow my phone? And I was like, well, it's still not going to work because I still need a SIM card. She's like, well, you could use it to go on the internet if you need, if you find a Wi-Fi hotspot, and you can use it to contact us through like, I don't know, Messenger or whatever. And I was like, oh, sure. I'll take it. I literally made PDFs of like the places I was supposed to go to via Google Maps and then just put it on that smartphone and just walked around and tried to figure out where I was. But I also had like printed versions too. So I rented a phone from the airport. And the first thing I did was like call my friend on the train. And I was like, hey, I'm coming into the city. What time and where? She's like, oh my God, you're using a phone. And I was like, yeah, I had to rent one. And then it goes back to the part where I was talking about the Hawaiian festival and then finding my hotel with the smell like cigarettes and the snack bar. But I also went to a maid cafe as well a couple days later and didn't want food. It was actually kind of empty, the maid cafe that I went to. And the first maid that talked to us was my friend and I. And my friend told the maid that I don't speak Japanese. And the maid was like, all right, well, I'm going to bring you someone that speaks English. And I was like, oh, you don't have to do that. She's like, okay. Because I was already feeling awkward. So I didn't want to feel more awkward if someone started speaking English to me. And so I was like, don't do that, please. She's like, no, it's okay. So then another maid came out and then she's like, what do you guys want to order in like English? And I was like, this is so weird. And then I was like, oh, we just want coffee. She's like, okay, cool. What kind of coffee? So we ordered our coffee and mine had like a little dog. It's like there's like in the whipped cream on the top, it was like the shape of a dog. And I was like, okay.
Oh, that's
cool.
weird.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. It's pretty cute. And then she's like, all right, before you drink your drink, we have to do some magic. And I was like, oh, no. I saw this in Train Man because he's an otaku and he went to maid cafes all the time in the show. And now I have to do this now. And it feels really awkward. And I had this really awkward smile and I looked at my friend and she looked back at me and she's smiling. And then the maid was like, all right, now make your hands into the shape of a heart. I did that. And then she's like, all right, now from side to side with me, say moe moe kyun. And now your drink will taste better. Ready? And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, ready? Moe moe kyun. She's like, okay, all together now. And then we did it. And she's like, yay! Now drink your drink. And I drank it. She's like, how does it taste? I'm like coffee. She's like, I'm glad you like it. I was like, okay. And then she left, and my friend and I were just like quietly laughing because there's no one else there. And if we laughed loudly, she would hear us and think that we were laughing at her. I've actually been to a maid cafe a total of 3 times, but hear me out. I'm going to justify all 3.
Okay.
The first one is the first. No. The first one was the reason I just told you because I was curious, and my friend was like, I don't really want to go here, but we're going to go anyways because you're curious. And I was like, all right, cool. So that was the first experience. The second experience was I was with a group of friends. This is in 2014, so the year after. I was with a group of friends, and they were all like, oh, what do you guys want to do? And we're like, why don't we go to Akihabara? There's like some electronic stores I want to check out. And they're like, okay, cool. So we went to the biggest one. I forgot the name of it, but now it's called like Edion. They sell like, it's like a Best Buy, but like Japanese. Mm-hmm. So we went around there, just looked for some stuff. And then we're like, oh, let's go drink. We want to drink alcohol. And they were like, well, we can go to this bar in Shibuya. And I was like, well, how long is that going to take? Oh, it's going to take like 10 minutes or so by train. But looks like it's pretty crowded right now because it was like 5 and people are like getting off of work. So we're like, all right. How about we go somewhere else? And I was like, oh, I know a maid cafe we could go to. They're like, what? And then I was like, yeah, it's this way. So we go to that area, and then there was a girl out front, and she had like a sign, and she's like, yeah, she's dressed as a maid. She's like, come to the shop. We have stuff. And then my friend, he's like this really tall Japanese dude, and he's very blunt, but like in English, he'd be like, hey, yo, what's up? You guys got alcohol up there? And then this maid she's like, excuse me? He's like, we're looking for beer or sake or whatever. Do you guys have that? She's like, oh yes, we do. And he's like, all right, cool. He's like, all right, guys, come on. This maid's telling us that we can get a sweet deal on beer if we go. And we're like, what, really? She's like, yeah, it's only going to be like 200 yen if we go, which is like $2. I was like, what, really? 200 yen? How big is the beer? And he's like, oh, it's like a pint. I was like, oh, hell yeah. So we follow this maid up to this maid cafe, and she's like, all right, now, there's like 5 of us, and we all sat down, and they're like, okay. It was really weird because we looked out of place because there were all these maids and these like otaku nerdy looking dudes and some foreigners. We're just like these young college kids, and we're like, all right, let's all just get beer. And we got fucking drunk at a maid cafe. We just got fucking trashed. And the maid that was serving us, she was so chill about it. She's like, what you guys want, huh? And we're like, yeah, we just want beer. She was just as chill as the friend that asked, like, if the initial girl, like, do you guys have beer up there? So she's like, y'all college students? We're like, hell yeah. She's like, all right, cool. You guys want beer? We're like, yeah. And so we just ordered like a bunch of beer and got super wasted. So that was the second time was a lot of fun. I recommend getting drunk in a maid cafe if you have the opportunity to, because otherwise it'll just feel really awkward.
Yeah, man. Next time you and I go together.
Bro, okay, we gotta
go
get
drunk in a maid cafe.
We're gonna go to Japan, and right after we're gonna go to South Korea.
Yeah, sounds good.
And yeah, we'll get drunk in a maid cafe, so we'll feel less awkward. And then the third time I went, I was with my girlfriend, and we were in Akihabara, and she's like, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I jokingly, I was like, we could go to a maid cafe. She's like, oh, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, no, I was just kidding. It's really weird, really awkward. And the first 2 times I went were not great. The second time was better than the first. And she's like, well, I kind of want to go with you. And I was like, okay, well, it's weird. She's like, yeah, okay, it's fine. So we go up the elevator. We go to the first one, and it's like super crowded. We're like, let's not go to this one. So we go back down the elevator, find another one. And there's this really sweet girl. She's like, oh, yeah, come to the maid cafe. And we're like, okay, cool. So we follow her. She gives us a little bit of a discount. We go into the cafe, sit down. And my girlfriend's like, oh, let's pretend that we don't speak Japanese. And I was like, what's the purpose in that? Like, we're just trolling the maid at that point. Like, there's no point. And then she's like, oh, it'll be funny. Watch. So then the maid comes, and she's speaking full Japanese to us. We both understand what she's saying. But then I was like, in English, I was like, I would like, like, I was like acting like an idiot. And my girlfriend was also like, yeah, can we get this? And then the maid was like, sorry, what was that? I don't really speak English that well. And then my girlfriend and I just look at each other for like 5 seconds. And then I think at that point we connected. We're like, we'll just speak Japanese because this didn't turn out as funny as we thought it would. And then she's like, yeah, we'll just have this and this. And I was like, and she's like, okay, cool. So she gets this like coffee and ice cream, and we're just hanging out, chilling. And then I was like, oh yeah, look at this. You can get a photo with the maids for like $10. That seems really stupid and expensive. And my girlfriend's like, yeah. And then I was like, well, what if we dabbed in the photo? She's like, oh, because this is in 2017. This is like when dabbing was like super popular. Right. It was like the fad. So then as a joke, she's like, yeah, we could do it together. And then we asked the maid, like, oh, can we take a photo with you? And she's like, okay, but I'm sorry, only one of you can do it. And then my girlfriend's like, I want you to do it. And I was like, man. I was like, no, we have to do it together. She's like, well, we can only do one person in the photo. Otherwise it'll be $20. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit too expensive for a photo with some girl that I'm never going to ever see ever again. So then I was like, all right, I'll do the photo. I told the maid, I'll do the photo, and I want to do a specific pose. She's like, okay, cool. I'll be right back. She leaves. She comes back holding this giant whiteboard, and she puts it on the table. She's like, all right, who do you want to take the photo with? I'm like, oh, I could choose a maid. She's like, yeah, sure. So I'm looking at all these girls. I'm like, I don't really care. And I look at her, and I look at her photo, and I point to her, and I was like, I want to take a photo with this maid. She's like, oh, me? Yes, of course. And then I was like, okay, cool. So then we go onto the stage, and this is like in front of everyone, but like, they announced like, oh, this person bought a photo. It's like, when you're streaming and someone gives you bits, or they do a gift sub, and you're like, oh, right. Like this person, they just gifted the sub to these people. But for them, it was like, this person just bought a photo. Let's give them a round of applause. So I'm standing on the stage, and everyone's clapping for me. I'm like, what the fuck? And then she's like, okay. So they bring out their like Fujifilm Instax camera, And she turns to me. She's like, "What kind of pose do you want?" And I was like, I want to do a dab. Do you know what a dab is?" She's like, "No, what's that?" And I literally did like the dab pose on the stage. And then she's like, "Oh, you mean like this?" And she didn't do it like the way that you're supposed to do it with your head down towards your elbows, right? She like did it where it was like kind of like a hula dance, and she was looking at the camera. It looked like she was like airbending. She was like pushing something away. And I was like, okay, that's close enough. So she's like, "You have to choose a hat." And I was like, "A hat? I don't really want to wear a hat." She's like, "Well, you have to. It'll make the picture more fun." And I was like, I looked at my girlfriend who like, she gives like a really big thumbs up. She's smiling. And I was like, fine. So I put on some bunny ears and I do the dab with the maid. She takes the photo. She gives it to me and she's like, "All right, thank you so much. The photo will develop or will finish developing in like 5 minutes." I was like, okay, cool. To this day, I still have that photo on my wall because it was fucking $10, and why would I ever throw that away, right? I'm looking at it right now. I'm turning around and looking at it, and it looks so stupid. I look like an idiot.
Oh man, that sounds so nerve-wracking. I don't think you could pay me to do that.
If someone was like, "Hey, DJV, let me take a photo with you," you're like, "Why?"
Yeah.
So that was the last time I had ever gone to a maid cafe. But bro, honestly, I will go with you only if we're drunk though. We have to be intoxicated at some point because I don't know if I can go a fourth time.
But how was the food though? Because see, like I loved the food in Japan. Like that was honestly like when I went to Japan, that was like my first experience getting legit ramen, legit like udon and all that stuff. And like but unfortunately like the maid cafe that I went to, their food was very uh no thank you.
It was it was very mediocre,
Okay.
and like the food that I had the third time with my girlfriend, we both had like coffee drinks, and they kind of tasted like instant coffee or like Folgers coffee. It wasn't like high quality. It was better
Sure.
than that, but maybe they just poured like a can of Rainbow Boss into a cup and were like, "Here you go, it's gourmet." And we had ice cream, and it was like one of those tall sundaes that you see at like one of those classic American diners, those like tall cups. And it was like stacked. There was like azuki beans, there was mochi, there was like 3 different flavors of ice cream. There was like strawberry, matcha, and vanilla, and there was like cornflakes at the top, as well as like some pocky sticking out of it. So that was like the most elaborate part of it, but it wasn't the best ice cream, but it was really good. Like again, like as you mentioned, like the food outside of that is like super amazing, but like.
Sure.
The food we had didn't feel like it was dollar store quality, but it didn't feel like it was like worth the price we paid for at the same time.
Right, right.
It was okay, but I honestly wouldn't order food if I ever go there again.
Yeah, same.
I would order like a draft of Asahi because yeah. Alcohol there is like what you're getting basically.
Sure.
So going on the topic of food, I had udon the first time I went. The year after I had chirashi, which is basically just like raw fish over rice, like a bunch of raw fish over rice.
Yeah.
On this island called Enoshima, and that was probably my favorite part of one of my favorite dishes overall. And then I had curry, I had ramen, and a bunch of other stuff, like what's it called? Okonomiyaki. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. Remind me what it is though.
It's like people say it's a Japanese pancake. Technically, it is.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like cabbage and meat that's all mixed together in the shape of a circle, and you fry it over a giant fryer in the middle. But the most interesting food I've ever had was called chankonnabe. Chankonnabe. It's sumo wrestlers' food. It's what the sumo wrestlers eat. And you can get it specifically, not just here, but there's a district there's a district in Tokyo called Ryogoku, which is where a lot of the sumo matches happen, since there's like a giant sumo stadium. And a lot of restaurants around there serve chankonabe. And what it is soup, a soup base with like cabbage, vegetables, mushrooms, um, and a lot of meat and some rice. And it's a huge meal. It's supposed to be very hearty because sumo wrestlers have to eat a lot, as
Yeah.
you know. But that's probably like the most interesting thing I've ever had in Japan.
Wow, that's cool. I'm looking forward to trying that when we go.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, hell yeah. What about you? What was the best and most interesting thing you've ever had?
Um, I mean, I remember ordering. I mean, some of this is pretty basic, but like I just remember ordering like ramen from like a vending machine type thing, where you just push the button of the type of ramen bowl that you want, and then you just take the ticket that the vending machine spits out, and you just give that to your waiter or what have you, and then they'll
Oh
just
yeah.
bring your bowl out to you. Um, and yeah, man, that like I don't think I've had like ramen quite the same since Japan. There's a lot of good places that have been popping up, here in California, but it's just not quite the same. Um, there was it was funny because we were just in Shinjuku, my cousin and I, and we were looking for a place to eat, and there's so many different restaurants, and we just kind of took on the mentality of, okay, we'll just go to the place where the line is the longest.
Yes,
So
that's a
that's kind
good.
of what we
Yeah.
did. And yeah, so it was like it was an udon restaurant, but it was kind of like Chipotle style, if that makes sense, where you just get a bowl and you just add to you choose your broth base, and then you just kind of add into what you want in your soup, and
Mm.
uh, and yeah, it was really good. I was pleasantly surprised.
So was it like cafeteria style where you just like take things and put it in there, or did you order it from the menu?
I'm pretty. It was cafeteria style where you kind of like in a queue, and then you just as you go down the row, you just point to what you want, and they'll put it in your bowl. I think is how it was.
So that exact place is actually in San Francisco, and it
Oh,
tastes exactly the same as probably what you had, and it probably is the same restaurant. It's called Marukame Udon,
okay.
and it is exactly that. You pick a base, and then you add what you want in there, and yeah, and then you can add some other stuff if you want to. Like there's some fried stuff like croquettes, chicken. You can put
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And yeah, yeah. So that restaurant is actually in San Francisco, and it tastes just like the Japanese version, which is very surprising to me.
Oh, nice. I need
It,
to check that out then.
dude, yeah. Let me know when you're in the city. We'll go together.
All right, sounds good.
Probably after COVID because they're only doing takeout and it's not the same.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely a feeling when you like when you're in there in the line, you have your tray, and you're just like walking through and picking what you want. It's dope. And I remember the first time I went there to the one in San Francisco. They were playing Nujabes music from Samurai Champloo, and I was like, "What is this? This is so fucking cool!" It's like all just hip hop beats. It was sick. Um, but I digress. So you mentioned udon in Japan and ramen, and it hasn't been the same, right?
Yeah. I mean, part of it is also just the experience of being in Japan as well, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel that because when I had sushi in Japan, it just that was like peak sushi for me because it was so good that I didn't know if
Yeah,
I wanted to
man.
eat any other sushi ever again.
Right. Yeah, cuz like when I got back to the States, and like I would have the sushi, and it's also, surprisingly it's more expensive here in the US.
Mm.
At least based on like the restaurants that I had gone to in Japan. I went to I mentioned the conveyor belt restaurant that I went
Hmm.
to, and like most of them was just like most of the plates were just like 150 yen each, which is what's that now, like the exchange rate. Well, back then it wasn't that much. I think it was like $2 basically.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Now it would be like I usually equate it to $1.50, but it's actually less. It would be for us. It would be like, I don't know, $1.30, which is so cheap.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
dollar
because
strong.
the U.S. economy was actually pretty bad in 2010, so
Yeah, yeah, it's
the
better
dollar
now.
was pretty shit. But yeah, it is better now. But yeah. So that's actually still really cheap. $1.30 for like a plate of nigiri. Like damn.
Yeah, you could not go wrong with that.
Yeah, it's really good. What else did I have? It was there was it was ramen. It's kind of like Korean barbecue, but it was like Japanese, and it was like over like a clay pot, I think it was, or a stove.
Oh, you
You
went
know?
to an izakaya and you had it was a yakiniku, which is
Yeah.
basically just like meat over the fire.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
so good.
That was really good. I'm craving that now. I haven't had K barbecue since before COVID, man. So or
I've been
just
making it.
any of that. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I miss having it made for me, or like making it all marinated by someone else and then doing it yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been missing it too, man. What is that place in Concord?
Uh,
That Gen? No, not
yeah.
Gen.
Oh,
Is it
there's a
Gen?
Gen in Concord, and there's an Ogane in
Oh,
Concord as well.
Ogane is so good.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah, there's
I re-
actually one like right next to where I live too, but like I don't feel comfortable going because the outdoor seating is. Some people are okay doing the outdoor seating, but for me, it's like there's all these people walking by and everything. So no, I'm good.
dude, I feel it. Yeah, a lot of SF places are doing outdoor seating now, and I'm like, these tables are a little bit too close together. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man,
Um,
COVID ruins everything.
For real, man. For real. Like a lot of businesses are closing because of it, and I would love to go to like an izakaya because there actually are quite a few in the city that are similar to the experience you had in Japan, but it's
Hmm.
not going to be quite the same, and it's more expensive. Whereas the one in Japan is like significantly cheaper.
Yeah,
But yeah, dude, that's so cool. Like izakaya experiences are really cool because one, everything is cheap, but some of the places you can do what's called nomi hodai, which is you pay X amount of money, which is usually like $10 to $15, and you can do all you can eat and drink for an hour or an hour and 30 minutes or 2 hours.
oh jeez.
It sounds like a
Man,
lot, and it is.
yeah, this is in Japan.
Yeah, this is in Japan.
Oh gosh, see, that's the thing. Like, I would never know how to find a place like this, because I would need to like kind of learn the language and have somebody that could direct me to a place like that, because that's what I wanted. But it was so hard to find places like that for me, at least at the time when I had limited access to internet. And it was back when there weren't as many resources available to kind of find that type of stuff. So yeah.
No, I feel it. Now you're just making me want to take you everywhere that I went.
Yeah,
Because
let's do it.
yeah, dude, I'm 100% down once COVID's all over. Because, man, I gotta tell you about some of the places I went to. So like in my first year, I ended up finding Toho Studios, the movie company, like their studio lot, and there's like a giant mural of the Seven Samurai poster, but also a statue of Godzilla, and you can just like take a photo next to it. It was so cool.
Yeah, damn.
But there's also a penguin bar, which is you can feed penguins at this bar,
I
and
think
the
I've
the
heard about this. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a regular bar, but their gimmick is that they have a enclosure, a glass enclosure with like penguins just swimming, and live penguins like swimming around in there, and I think they're like the only bar in Japan that can do it. Um, and I actually was able to feed the penguins, and I was sat next to them and just watched them while I was drinking. It was weird. It was a really weird experience. Um, and then like a few days after that, I went to it's called Dungeon Bar. It's you go into this, you go up this elevator and you end up in this black room with like nothing, and you walk forward, and then you're like, okay, where's the door? How do I find someone to talk to? And before you can finish your thoughts, like this loud alarm starts blaring, and this light starts flashing, and then you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then the door opens and the lady's like, hey, come on in. You're like, what the fuck? So they jump scare you. And then you go in there, and then you have like weird food, like there's like syringes in the food, there's like you drink out of beaker cups, like the food is shaped like skulls and eyeballs, and then every 30 minutes an alarm will go off, and the announcement will be like, there's a monster loose, everyone close your doors, because you're all sitting on like these enclosed spaces that have doors that can close, and you have to close your door, and this dude in a costume comes out and starts fucking opening the doors and scaring you. It's weird, man.
Oh, that sounds so awesome.
I kid you not.
Over that.
Dude, oh my God. I was supposed to go with my family this year, and I was going to bring my brother directly there because he's like, that sounds awesome. I was like, yeah, we got to go. And it got canceled. Dude. Oh, I'm so disappointed, dude. I really wanted to go there again because I haven't been there since like 2014.
Yeah. I know that there's a Final Fantasy cafe that I really want to go to.
All right, I'm taking pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, I know where it is. It's in
Oh, you've been?
No, I haven't been. I've only been to the outside. It's in Akihabara.
Okay. Yeah. When that wasn't around in 2010 when I was there, but there was a Square Enix store that I went to with my cousin, and that was pretty mind blowing. Just because I feel like that type of thing back then was kind of uncommon. Like things like that will probably pop up here in the States more these days, but like back then, just to see a store dedicated just to like Square Enix properties and all the stuff in there, and they had Sephiroth that was like encased in the ground it was man, it was just really cool, especially because like I mentioned, I'm a longtime Final Fantasy fan, and a lot of other Square Enix games. So just seeing all that was really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely like a haven for fans to pilgrimage to,
Oh yeah.
I mean, now I really want you to go to the Final Fantasy cafe because I've seen pictures too. I've never been inside and I've only seen the outside of it, but yeah, I mean, it looks like everything you could want from Final Fantasy because like I know the food's based off of stuff from the game too, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so cool. Like, I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, but I would go there just to experience it, just to say that I went for bragging rights,
All right, you play a Final Fantasy game, and I'll play a Yakuza game. How's that?
Okay. Which one do you recommend to me?
Well, I mean, would you be more into like like, would it bother you if you were playing like a retro one, like from back in the day, like the 90s, or would you rather play something a bit more modern?
I'm not really turned off by the retro aspect because I have a lot of retro games, and my favorite console is the GameCube, and so I have a lot of games for that. And I still play some of them to this day. So yeah. I know that what the games you're mentioning are from a different era, but the graphics are still very similar. But at the same time, on our previous podcast, we mentioned you mentioned to me that I should try the remakes, or like Final Fantasy VII remake. You didn't mention 15. Is there an issue with 15, or should I just avoid 15?
Well, the thing is, I haven't beat 15 yet.
Oh,
I'm getting around to it. I'm trying, but I probably, if you wanted me to recommend something, I would say probably 10. And I feel like most fans of Final Fantasy would probably agree that, like, if there's like an entry level game that has a good, like, the best of more modern stuff, and also the classic stuff. There was an HD remaster of 10 and 10-2 that came out maybe like 5 years ago. So I would recommend that. 10 is well loved.
Is that the one with Vivi?
No, that's 9.
Ah, okay.
A lot of people love that one too. It's very like, if there was like a Disney game like for Final Fantasy, I guess you would say. Well, what I mean is, like, it's very like it feels like a storybook, like a fairy tale, like in the most like traditional sense, I guess. That would be Final Fantasy 9, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah. If that's what you're into. But for 10 has, like, I think it was very like, the art style was based from like Okinawan style.
Oh.
So it's very like Islander type, like that type of stuff.
Is that the one where the dude goes, ah, ha, 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 ha?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to play 10. I'm going to
it.
play 10. That sounds awesome. The dubbed version, just so I can hear that.
Right.
Okay, I gotta see if it's on Switch. If not, I'll just buy it on PC because like I've been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild on my Switch, and I just like the portability, but also like playing it on my TV. So cool, man.
If you have a Vita, I mean, I played it on Vita, but not a lot of people have a Vita.
Oh, I don't have a Vita, sadly.
Okay, well you can get it on PS4.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look that up later, dude.
Which Yakuza game would you recommend?
Please start with 0. It is
0. Okay.
the first one of the entire franchise that sets the story and the basis for the characters. You switch between 2 main characters and get 2 different takes on their lives and story. And it kind of sets up the mechanics for future games. Although this game did not come first, this game came out much later than the first game. The first game originally came out in 2005. So Zero came out in 2015, but it takes place in the 80s. So
like a prequel?
Definitely a prequel, but that doesn't discount it from playing it first. You should definitely play Zero first.
All right, cool.
Yeah, please. There's a lot of 80s nostalgia, which is awesome too. And again, you get to see Japan in the 80s. And a little fun fact, in the 80s, Japan was experiencing something called the bubble. And it's referred to by a lot of people in Japan as the bubble era because Japan was experiencing a lot of like financially exponential growth. And so Japan had a lot of money. They were buying things outside of their country. They were investing a lot of different companies. This happened from like 1986 until 1991, I believe. And when the bubble burst, like Japan's economy fell. And since then, a lot of people have been trying to rebuild Japan to that point because they missed the bubble era when everything was like fun and groovy and everyone had so much money. Little side note, I have a friend from Japan. She told me that her mom was a nurse during that time, and in order to flag down a taxi, you would have to pull out a 10,000 yen bill, which is the equivalent of $100, and wave it in the air so that a taxi would see you and know that you have a lot of money and they're willing to just take you anywhere. Her mom was so rich back in the day that she would just fly to Hong Kong with $10,000, spend all of it on like designer clothes and accessories, and then come back with a suitcase full of all that stuff. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. I was like, what the fuck, dude? That's insane. Why aren't you rich now? I digress. So you talked about the Square Enix Square Enix store that you went to, and how you want to go to the Final Fantasy cafe. Something that I really like about Japan is that they have places like that. I'm not talking about just cafes, but they have like buildings or areas that are dedicated to a specific brand. One of the places that I really enjoyed was in 2018. I went to this place called Sega Joypolis on Odaiba. Odaiba is a man-made island in the Bay of Tokyo.
Yeah.
It's just full of malls, and it's known for having the giant Gundam statue.
Right.
So in one of the malls is a place called Sega Joypolis. What it is it's a arcade / theme park dedicated to Sega properties. And I'm not just talking about Sonic. They do have Sonic there. They have Sonic themed games, but there's like a roller coaster. There's like an indoor spinning ride. They have House of the Dead, but it's not just House of the Dead, the video game. You sit in like a moving chair, and there's 2 screens that you bounce between, and you have to shoot all the zombies with different weapons. So it's like an interactive House of the Dead. There's like a VR section where they have interactive games. There's like a horror section. There's like a wing glider ride that's indoor. But the best part of it for me, and my favorite part of the whole park, was an attraction where it was the Initial D game, the arcade game, but you're sitting in actual cars that are based on the game. And the cars move when you're driving them in place.
That sounds awesome.
It's sick. Oh my god. I think about it every now and then, and I want to go back.
How much did one play cost though? Like 400 yen?
So we actually bought day passes that were $40, and you can just play everything an unlimited amount of times.
Oh, nice. Okay, okay.
Definitely worth it.
I remember there were so many arcades in Japan, but like they were just really expensive, and like I would think like how do they afford playing at these arcades regularly? But
Yeah, I
yeah.
know, right? It's like there are people that go in there daily, like play the crane game and then leave or whatever.
Right.
Last year I went to round one for the first time. It was in Kyoto. Have you've probably like been to one? There's one in San Jose, I know.
Right. Oh, round one, that's a Japanese property? Like
Yeah, I did not.
company?
I
Oh wow.
yeah, I
Okay.
didn't know that. Like they had their franchise and they brought one over to San Jose, and I was like, well, okay, that's cool. Everyone was getting hyped about it. I was like, why? And then I was like, oh shit, it's because it's Japanese. Like that's interesting. So for those that don't know, round one is like a giant arcade building in the Japanese sense. I haven't been to the one in San Jose, but the one in Japan that I went to had karaoke, a bowling alley,
Yeah.
darts. There was a bar. At the bottom, there's crane games, and then every floor after that, there was like 7 floors total. They were all arcade games.
7 floors.
Oh,
Holy
sorry,
shit.
it was 12 floors. I was I
Oh my
miscounted.
god. That's
Yeah,
insane.
it was huge, and like the top floor was like karaoke. The floor below that was bowling, and then there was like horse racing where you can like bet on virtual horses, but then there's also live horses. I was like, what the fuck? Why would you play the game when you can just bet on the real ones? um
Wow.
there was like Final Fantasy 14. There was like a Halo station. There was like those basketball games, when you go to like an arcade, like you put like 50 cents in, and then you just the balls release and then you just like shoot them in the hoop. So they had that. Of course, Initial D, House of the Dead. They had like a Luigi's Mansion game. It was an awesome arcade, and yeah, everything was expensive, but it was actually kind of reasonable, I think, because some of the games it depended on the price. So
Sure, sure.
still, though, if you go there every day, you're spending a lot of money.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I remember because you mentioned Odaiba. I remember going to Odaiba for the Comiket convention.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it's one of the oldest running comic conventions in the world for those that aren't familiar. But yeah, that was really cool. It's kind of strange, it was a strange experience because like I had been to like Fanime vaguely once. Like when I say vaguely, I mean I just visited. I went for a day and I kind of didn't really stay long because I'm not really into like that like I've never cosplayed or anything. Have you
Sure.
ever cosplayed? I don't know if you're
I kind of did. So back in my weeb days, I was like really into anime, of course, and I
yeah.
went to this convention called SAG Anime. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It's an anime convention in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
And then my cousins and I were like, hey, let's just cosplay as the Melancholy of Suzumiya classmates because it's just a white shirt and a red tie. We're like, okay, cool.
Right.
That was the only thing I did. So it wasn't really true cosplay. I was dressed as like what looked like a Mormon Mormon dude.
That's funny.
I could have had a Bible and be like, hey, what's
You're
up?
cosplaying as a Mormon. Yeah.
Haven't you seen that Mormon anime? It's like super popular right now.
Well, yeah. So when I was at Comic-Con, like it was really different. Like the vibe was really different. Everyone was well. I mean, in general, like the Japanese crowds are very respectful, and they're not nearly as loud as like crowds in the West at these types of like conventions or whatever. You know.
Sure.
And not to mention like the cosplayers like are legit. As in like they would have like an actual like area dedicated just for people who are cosplaying, and there would be like rows of photographers or whatever around them taking pictures and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so it was cool. It was different than I expected, but yeah, man, just seeing all that, and I would sneak photos in. I don't know if that was disrespectful. I don't know if
No,
'cause
no.
yeah.
Sorry,
So.
what were you saying? I cut you off
Oh no,
because.
no, it's fine. It's just because I guess it's a common thing when you're at like these American conventions where people cosplay. It's just a common thing for you to go up to a person and just like ask if you could take a picture of them. And I felt that, even though my cousin and I would try to do that here and there with some of the cosplayers at the convention, like I wasn't necessarily it just I guess I just felt maybe like, am I being a little disrespectful, being some American dude trying to take a picture of you. So
Oh no, I think you were fine.
okay, all right, yeah,
Because like people in Japan love taking photos, and I'm not talking about Japanese people specifically. I'm talking about anyone in Japan. Doesn't matter what ethnicity or race you are, you're gonna take pictures because if for
sure.
Japanese people, like some of the things they see that we see as well are probably not normal to them. Like a giant Gundam, for example. Like people in Japan are like, oh, I want to go see it. For an American, they're like, oh hell yeah, I want to go see it and take pictures. So there's a lot of like the tourists taking pictures and the locals taking pictures because to them that's weird too, you know?
Sure. Well, I think the reason I mentioned is because there were a couple, maybe like one or two, that kind of waved us off. They were like, "No, we don't want our photos taken." So, but
Oh, I see. I
yeah,
see. Yeah, that makes sense. No,
yeah,
that's like a common thing in America too at anime conventions where people just like have their cameras out and take photos, but I don't
sure,
know,
sure.
some of these guys look a little sus. In America at least.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, dude, yeah, Odaiba's dope. There's a bunch of malls, movie theaters, the headquarters for Fuji TV is there. And oddly enough, there's a car museum, which is strange.
wow.
I think it's because there's a Toyota museum there too. That must be why. So you can like sit inside old Toyotas and new Toyotas. I think you can buy one there too. I'm not sure, but yeah, Odaiba's dope. Odaiba's it's a dope little place. Have you ever gone outside of Tokyo?
No, not really. I would like to eventually, but yeah, no, at least not the time that I went.
Okay, okay, got it. Man, you got to go to Nara Park. You've heard of that, right? With the deer.
I have not actually.
So, oh, okay. So Nara Park is a park near Kyoto. Rather, I think it's a prefecture and a city. Um, and they're known for the deer. And what you do is the basically the park is the whole prefecture, so the deer roam freely around, and they walk wherever, they poop wherever, and if they're in the middle of the street, you have to wait for them to move.
Oh wow.
They're also very aggressive, very greedy, and very fat because all they do all day is just laze around. And the whole point of going to Nara for a lot of tourists is getting like deer crackers and then feeding the deer. They're fed so much that they're all just fat and they just walk around. But like for Nara and its culture, the deer are like the spirits. They're like the most respected animals there. So it's like illegal to kill one, but it is not illegal for the government because they have to do population control, and obviously that
Right.
involves getting rid of some of the deer.
Wow.
But
Fascinating.
yeah, I've only been there once, and it was scary because, like I said, they're very aggressive, and when you're a tourist and they know that you have food, they will bite at anything and everything to get food.
Oh my goodness.
There were some Chinese tourists near me, and the dude put the food in his pocket, and the deer bit um the front area of his pants.
Oh my god.
And he was like, "Oh my god!" He's like freaking out. And I turned to my girlfriend, and I was like, "Yep, that thing bit his dick, like for sure." And after that, we got out of there because first of all, it smelled like deer and it smelled like shit, and we were like, "We want to get out of here." So, and the deer were just so scary. Um, but I'm not trying to tell you shouldn't go there. I'm trying to tell you should go there and experience it, and then be afraid, just like me.
Oh no, sure, sure. I'm down, man. I'm down for whatever. You know, it's something I also want to do. is I want to go to a wrestling show in Japan because I know that wrestling is actually pretty big. Are you familiar with like Japanese wrestling at all?
You're not talking about sumo. You're talking about like Japanese wrestlers, right?
Yeah, like pro wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of familiar. I had a friend that was really into watching it. But at the same time, there's a show on Netflix called Terrace House. Have you heard of
Okay.
it?
Yeah.
One of the members on the show was a pro wrestler, and she was like 100% into it. That was her whole job. That was like her family lineage because her mother was a pro wrestler, and so
Oh, was this
she
the controversy that happened?
yeah, she
Yeah.
ended up taking her own life. So
Yeah.
it was very sad. But and now the season has been taken off of Netflix. But while I was there, like millions of other people, we all watched it, and yeah, she was a pro wrestler, and she's really good at it, and it looked like a lot of fun to watch. So I am also interested in watching it.
Yeah, like one of my favorite wrestler, like a female wrestler named Kairi Hojo. She was in the WWE for a while, and I always root for the Asians to make it in WWE because there actually has yet to be like an actual like Japanese wrestler. Even though Japanese wrestling is so big and so influential in the wrestling
Mm.
industry, like there hasn't been a Japanese wrestling champion yet, And so I was waiting. Well, I take that back. Asuka is I think the first Japanese female wrestling champion in the WWE. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like just there hasn't really been that many big ones, and so I was really rooting for her to make it, but she actually, because of COVID, it made things complicated, so that she kind of opted out of her contract, I believe, and so she's no longer wrestling with the WWE. But I was so bummed, man, because
Oh
she's
man.
really good, and like, and I also like the fact that she just looks like somebody I could have went to school with.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, but yeah, man, Japanese wrestling is so influential in the wrestling industry, and I feel like they just kind of get poorly represented and poorly used in like Western pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you know of it, but it's also like really big only in the country that it came from.
Sure.
Um, and even though it has a like a counterpart, an American counterpart in this respective, like it's like you're aware of it, but it's not as big as it is in the U.S. Another example I can say is about like Japanese high school baseball. Now you might be like, what are you talking about? Like, why high school baseball? Well, it's actually because there's a tournament that happens every summer, in I think it's Kyoto. It's called no, it's Kobe. Well, there's a stadium called Koshien, and it's also the name of the tournament. It happens every summer, and even though Japan does have like Japan Major League Baseball, the high school baseball is the most popular because it's been happening for I think over 100 years now. Um, and the teams that compete are like very competitive. They take the best teams from every single prefecture in all of Japan, and they all fight it out. And this is a lot bigger than pro baseball in Japan because pro baseball, you're like, okay, whatever, it's pro baseball. But like these kids, they fight really hard for this tournament, and then a lot of them end up becoming pro baseball players in Japan. So there's that aspect of it that like everything's on the line. So I
Yeah.
think that's why a lot of people really like it. But going back to Japan Pro Wrestling, the only big name I know in Japan Pro Wrestling is Masahiro Chono. Have you heard of this guy?
Sounds somewhat familiar, but not. I don't. Nothing rings a bell exactly.
He That's all right. He's a pro wrestler, um, and he's done a lot of not just pro wrestling stuff, but he's also on this show that happens every year. There's this comedy group called Gaki no Tsukai, and they do a comedy show every single year at the end of the year on New Year's Eve, where they have to not laugh for 24 hours. And a recurring segment every year is that pro wrestler Masahiro Chono will come out and he'll slap the shit out of someone just because he can. and because he's so tall, he's like 6 feet, and he's so muscular. And then if you saw him, you're like, oh shit, I don't want to get slapped by this guy. But that's like the most comedic part of him that I know. And I don't know too much about his wrestling career, but I actually saw him in person while I was in Japan one time.
Oh wow.
This is really tangential, but in the summer of 2016, the height of Pokemon Go was insane.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Right? And I happened to be in Japan at the same time. So I was in Tokyo at one of the big parks, and I was just passing through to meet up with a friend. And there's all these people playing Pokemon Go in the sweltering heat, and I was like, okay, this is crazy and stupid. And I'm walking by, I get to the station to meet up with my friend, but I see a large crowd of people and like a long line. I'm like, what is happening? Is this another Pokemon Go thing? And I take a peek, and it's pro wrestler Masahiro Chono doing a book signing. I'm like, first of all, this dude wrote a book? I didn't know he was into writing books. And second of all, what are you doing at this station, like at the shop near a station, like signing books? It was so weird. But yeah, he's like the only dude I know from Japan Pro Wrestling. But I do want to watch a match live one day, because I think that'd be a lot of fun, just like cheering on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Japanese wrestlers are known to be way more technical. Their moves are very stiff, from what I understand. It's called like strong style, where like it's just the moves will actually hurt. Like you'll watch American wrestling, and they do like camera angles and tricks just to kind of make it look like the hits connect, but it doesn't usually. Whereas in Japan, like a lot of their moves are very stiff and
Really?
just yeah, apparently like they're okay, like taking the pain, that's just part of it.
I did not know that. That's scary.
I mean, it's still what's called a work, where like the moves aren't like full impact or anything, or they're not like they're not actual like 100% pure hits and stuff like that, but they're still like kicks and stuff will still be stiff, like they'll make contact.
Right. Because a lot of people say it's like acting, but I heard that's also offensive, so I don't want to call it that.
Sure.
But okay, yeah, I guess you could say like they're pulling their punches. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I guess so. Sure.
But it still looks painful, or maybe the person receiving the punch makes it look painful.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, there's been plenty of serious injuries and stuff that happen because of these dangerous moves that they pull off.
Damn, dude, that's insane. Dope. Yeah, pro wrestling in Japan seems to be like a very popular sport. On top of sumo wrestling, just like I guess Japanese people just love wrestling in general, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think theater also plays a big part in it. I from what I understand, like Japanese history has a lot of like theater, theatrical roots or whatever. So I guess that's kind of like a marriage of the two. Just theater and impacts wrestling type sports.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. Kabuki theater,
Right.
no, all that kind of theater. Yeah. Awesome. So going back to places in Japan, if you were to go again, where would you want to visit? What would you want to see?
Let's see. I know that there's different. Oh gosh, it's like these are things that I don't really think about as much, because I know that it's expensive. You've actually explained that it's actually not so expensive if you know somebody who can tell you where to go, right?
Or give you discounts. So like, oh, hey, here's a coupon for like 50% off this or whatever. It's like, oh shit, I didn't know about that. Yeah,
Sure,
because I
sure.
guess you couldn't read it, you know.
Sure. Well, honestly, I would rely on someone like you to kind of like give me guidance as to where I'd want to go. Like I mentioned, like I'd like to go to the Final Fantasy Cafe and like
Sure.
other things like that. I guess just food is one of my most like the favorite things that I like to do when traveling. I just like to taste what it's like to be in another country. You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
So that's pretty
Absolutely.
much honestly what I'd want to do. Like, don't get me wrong, museums and other stuff like that sound cool. Like, I think there's like a Studio Ghibli museum. I don't know if that's still around, but that sounds pretty cool to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to that museum. It's cool. I think you should definitely go there if you're a fan of the movies and of animation in general, because they actually explain how the movies are made, because all of it's drawn by hand, and they have like a machine showing you like how they use to like rotoscope certain things, and also how they animate certain things. One thing that's really cool about the museum is that they have a cafe where you can buy food. Some of it is like replicated from the movies,
Hmm.
and they have beer there that is specific to that museum. It is bottled by I forget which company, but like it's a regional beer. Craft beer is really popular in Japan, and a lot of it is regional.
Okay.
Um, so there's like a local brewery that makes a beer for the museum, and it's bottled in a beer in a bottle that is that has artwork created by Hayao Miyazaki's son. Um, so my intention going there was to drink both of the beers, but when you go to the museum, you have to buy a ticket in advance. You have to buy a ticket a month in advance, but you can only go during a certain time period because the museum gets very crowded. And to alleviate all the crowds, they tell you what time you can go to the museum, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So my girlfriend and I were like, all right, we're going to go to the museum, but it's from 4 to 6, and that's only 2 hours, and the museum closes at 6. So we went straight to the cafe, and we just shotgunned both of the beers, and so we inadvertently got really drunk when we were walking around the museum. We're like, oh shit, this is awesome, but we're so drunk, and we didn't mean to, but we wanted to drink the beers. But we didn't have enough time, so we just had to shotgun the beers and then continue on. But yeah, I mean, I recommend you go there. Um, it's in Tokyo. Stuff like Tokyo Disney is really cool too. And you might be thinking, well, this is just Disneyland. Well, Tokyo Disney Sea is the California Adventure version of their Disneyland,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's like it's like one of the best theme parks I've ever been to. And I'm not just like saying that because it's in Japan, but I'm talking about like food quality, um,
So
like
is it like California Adventure where they have certain areas that are sort of like a tribute to certain parts of Japan?
not really. It's more of like they're tributed to certain themes.
Okay.
So like when you enter, it's like kind of based on Italy. And they even have like a boat ride where a dude will sing in Italian,
Oh,
which is
okay.
really strange. And then there's like a Jules Verne section, which is really weird, but somehow fits in with the theme of the park. It's literally called the Jules Verne area. There's like a giant cruise ship that's permanently docked. Um, they have like a jungle area where the Indiana Jones ride is. They have a Ariel's Grotto area. They have an Aladdin area.
Oh, nice. So it's kind
Yeah,
of
so
like an
some
international feel type of park, huh?
yeah, exactly. And so the rides are really cool. But on top of that, the food is really good. One of the staples of Disney Sea is that they have flavored popcorn. So you have your regular popcorn, but then you have interesting flavors like you have curry, you have chocolate, strawberry, caramel, and yeah, it's just really, really good popcorn. Like you'll be surprised at how
Oh,
good the popcorn is. It's
curry popcorn. That sounds awesome. I need to try
yeah,
that.
it's so good. It is. That's my favorite flavor. I'm like this. I'm like I was so skeptical. I was like, is this really gonna taste like curry? I eat it. I'm like, holy shit, that tastes just like curry. What the fuck? Um, but I also recommend on the flip side of that going to Universal Studios Japan. because it is like Universal Studios Hollywood and a little bit like the one in Florida. Less so the one in Florida because there's like multiple areas in the Florida one because there's like islands of adventure. But in USJ, there's actually a San Francisco section, which is really funny.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta check that out. So what is actually in that area that's like San Francisco-esque?
They have a Chinatown gate,
Okay.
which is not like the one that is in SF. They have the Fisherman's Wharf sign that is pretty 1-to-1, but a little bit smaller.
Oh, cool.
And then they have like cable car tracks, but no cable car.
Oh man, I imagine that would be so trippy to go to, being from the Bay Area, you know?
I walked through there and I took a picture and I was like, I posted it to Instagram. I was like, hey guys, I'm in SF right now. I came back. And I was like, nah, I'm just kidding. Like, it's not real. It's a very small section of the park, but it is hilarious if you're from the Bay and you walk there. You're like, what is this? What's going on?
Sure.
But both of the parks are really cool. People in the western part of Japan will tell you USJ is better, obviously, because that's their park. And then people in Tokyo are like, no, Disney Sea is better because it's Disney. But Universal Studios Japan is pretty dope on its own. So some stuff that's not theme park related, I recommend you go to an onsen. Do you know what an onsen is?
You know, the term sounds familiar, but remind me.
So an onsen is a traditional bath.
Okay.
Yeah, usually it's just hot water and you just sit there and then you just chill for like however long you want to. Some of them are shared so that you have to like go with other people. Of course, the same gender. And then other times it's a private bath. Like sometimes you'll have a hotel room that has a private onsen, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
I definitely need a private one because I do not feel comfortable sharing a bath with other people.
So let me tell you about my experience with that. And to not go into too much detail, I went to one and I wanted to go to it because I heard that the water was gold, and it's called Arima Onsen in Kobe, specifically Hyogo Prefecture.
Literally
and my
gold?
friend, yeah, so I wanted to know that, and I was like,
Okay.
I told my friend, I was like, I want to go here because the water is gold, and she's like, oh yeah, Arima Onsen, I'll take you there. So we go there. We go to this onsen area, and she's like, okay, I'm going to wait for you out here. Just take as long as you need. And I was like, oh, you're not going to go to the bath? Because, even though the baths are split by gender, I thought she was going to take a bath as well. But she's like, no, I think I'm okay. I'm going to wait for you. And I was like, okay. And I was so nervous. I was so fucking nervous. I was like, so, what do I do when I go there? She's like, oh, just, you're going to have to take off all your clothes and you're going to put it into a locker and you're going to have a key and just take it with you. I was like, okay, cool. That's it, right? And then she's like, yeah, that's it. So, so I go, she waits for me there. I tell the lady at the counter, like, I want this specific type of bath. It comes with these things and then like a towel and like soap or whatever. She's like, okay, cool. So she gives me the stuff and then she gives me a basket. She's like, okay, when you go upstairs, take off all your clothes and put it in here and then put it in the locker. I was like, okay, awesome. So I go up the stairs, I go into the room. I immediately see a bunch of naked Japanese guys. All old men. And I'm like, my friend didn't tell me that I was going to be with other people. It's like, I thought I was going to be by myself. I 100% thought I was going to be by myself. And I got so fucking nervous. I literally wanted to turn around and leave. But I was like, all right, I paid $15 for this. I kind of have to commit because if I just go back down with all my stuff, I don't want to be like, yeah, it was great. Let's leave now. Because I came all the way here for that. We had to take like a 30-minute bus ride just to get to this onsen. So I'm standing there at the locker, like just opening it slowly, contemplating like, what do I do? Like, I'm so nervous. Do I just wait for all these guys to leave, or do I just like, do I just dip, or do I just like take off all my clothes right here in front of them? And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna get naked in front of all these old guys. And they're all looking at me, by the way, too, because I was not Japanese, and clearly I'm not Japanese. So they're like trying to figure that out. But also, I guess because I was the youngest person there, because these are all old guys, and I was like, oh god, I could see everything. And So I was like, okay. So I musked up the courage. I took off all my clothes, and I walked out. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to clean yourself before you go into the bath. So there's like a little station, a little row of like shower heads and buckets and soap and shampoo, and you're supposed to basically take a shower before you go to the bath, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but you're supposed to just clean yourself because I guess the notion here is that you're supposed to be clean before you enter the water, or you're supposed to have like a clean body, a clean mind, clean soul before you enter the water. So I clean myself. These guys are still staring at me, and I go into the water, and yes, the water is gold. That is because they colored it. But there's like some healthy stuff. I forget what kind of like minerals they use in the water, but the water is actually gold. It does look kind of murky and weird in a disgusting way, but when you actually like take the water in your hands, it is gold and it looks pretty cool.
Oh.
Yeah. And so this whole time I'm sitting there, the water is extremely hot. My body's still trying to get used to it. So I'm like kind of like halfway in the water. It's like the thing you do in a pool at a hotel, right? Where you go to the jacuzzi and you're like, oh, this is so hot. But then you put your body halfway in, and you start with your feet and your legs, and then you eventually put your whole body in. I had that experience, except I was completely naked by myself with a bunch of strangers.
Oh God, that sounds like my nightmare.
Yeah, and so I did that, and I sat there for 45 minutes just chilling, trying not to look at these other guys who were still staring at me. And I think they were talking about me. I'm pretty sure they were. I couldn't hear it because there was a waterfall that was really loud. And I thank God that waterfall was there because I didn't want to hear what they were talking about. And I just wanted to be chilling by myself. And so I finished, went back down to my friend, and I was like, that was awesome. In my mind, I was like, I don't know if I can do this ever again.
Wait, did your friend go to one as well, or they were just waiting for you?
Nah, she was just waiting for me for like an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 15 minutes for me to musk up the courage, and then another 45 for me to just be in the bath. So...
Well, let me ask you, if those other guys weren't there, would you have enjoyed your experience?
Yeah, I think I would have more as a first time experience. I think I would have felt more comfortable, but I also, looking back now, I'm very thankful that it happened because I have actually been to 2 other onsens that were just like that, but in different parts of Japan, and both of those times I felt more comfortable taking off my clothes and then just going into there with strangers. It also helped that the second time I did it was at a semi-private onsen in Hakone. Hakone is the mountainous area near Tokyo, south of Tokyo. I recommend you go there with your wife because there's a lot of ryokans there. Ryokans are like traditional Japanese inns, traditional Japanese hotels. And they're known in that specific region for having an onsen and going there to experience that onsen. What you get is you get a nice big room that is like, it looks like a traditional Japanese room. You get access to the bath at a certain time. And for breakfast and for dinner, you get a large Japanese meal. Like there's fish, vegetables, sweets, rice, everything you can think of. Like there's a little bit of it. There's a little bit of sushi, a little bit of chicken, meat, beef, and going back to the onsen part of it, there weren't that many people. There weren't any guys in there when I went to that onsen, and there's like one other dude, and then he left, and so I was literally by myself for like an hour and 30 minutes, which was awesome. And my girlfriend was like, "Oh, how was it?" I was like, "Oh, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun." I was actually alone the whole time. She's like, "What? Really? There was like 20 other people in the girls section." I was like, "Oh shit." That's kind of sad for you, but it was fine because we actually got to go to a private room together. There was a private onsen room that you can book for an hour just for couples. So that was really cool.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, man. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And then the third time I went to an onsen, it was in Yokohama, which is also south of Japan, but not as far south as Hakone. And it was just like the first one I went to. The water wasn't gold, but it was a little bit more chill. There was a view of the ocean, which is awesome. And there weren't that many people there either. But at this point, I was very, very comfortable just like taking off my clothes and putting it in the locker and then going to the onsen by myself. That was chill. And then I found out later from a friend who went there the day before. He was like, "Oh, did you go to that onsen?" I was like, "Yeah, it was super awesome." He's like, "Oh yeah, the Yakuza one, right?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah, that one's owned by the Yakuza." I was like, "Why? What? Really?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, well, nothing happened. I'm okay." He's like, "Okay, we'll just want to let you know for the future." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not going to go back there."
What are the dangers exactly, though? Like, what are the dangers of going to a Yakuza-owned business like that?
I guess for people in Japan, it's like a scary thing because if you see people in an onsen with tattoos, first rule of thumb is it's kind of like a common thing is you're not supposed to have a tattoo if you go to a public bath because it's illegal, and the whole point of having a tattoo and going to a public bath was to ward off the Yakuza from going. But if it's an onsen owned by the Yakuza, then it's okay for the Yakuza to bathe there.
Oh.
So, yeah. So it wasn't really bad. It was just like my friend was like, "Oh yeah, it's just scary because like they could like talk to you or tell you to come there or like mess with you, like just like bully you basically." And he's like, "I'm glad that didn't happen to you." I'm like, "Yeah, it was fine. I was with a bunch of old guys, unless they were the Yakuza, but they didn't talk to me, so it's fine."
I mean, you're patronizing their business, so.
That's true. I gave them money. But if you ever have the chance to, yeah, try to do one, like preferably a private one.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Definitely a private one.
It is really, really nerve-wracking.
It just reminds. I watched like a Japanese prank video where it's like, it's this one guy, he goes to one of those by himself, and there's a hidden camera, and then all at once 30 huge guys just run in and jump in the bath with him. And so he's just like squished up against the wall, and they're all just sitting there like silently, like it's a normal thing.
I've seen that video. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And he's just sitting there. He's like, fuck. And there's all these like big dudes just around him. Yeah. That I'm sure one of the scary things is that the Yakuza roll deep. So you don't want to be around because they're like all loud and splashing and like, that's their space. Like instead of them coming to your space, you're now in their space, right? So you have to like play by their rules, and if you don't jive with that, then either get out or get punched. Not get punched. That's a little bit too extreme, but you just have to listen to what they say.
Sure.
But yeah, man. I mean, I honestly, like, I'm not even joking here, and I'm not just saying this because we're on the podcast together, but I actually do want to go with you.
Yeah, man.
To Japan.
Sounds good.
Like, I think we'll have a good time. I mean, we'll bring our significant others, and they'll have fun too.
Right. How have you, now that you're an avid traveler to Japan and, you've picked up the language and everything, like, do you feel like a foreigner when you go still? Like, do you, like, response towards you? Like, have you, you know what I'm asking? Like, do you feel comfortable already, like, when you go to Japan?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So when I go to Japan, now that I've been a few times, I still feel like a foreigner, and I constantly do when I'm there. Like I'm very self-conscious of it because, being a foreigner in Japan is not a bad thing. It's more of something that like people will know that you're a foreigner. They're like, okay, you're not from here, so we have to like treat you differently, basically. When you're a Japanese person, there's different standards that you have to adhere to, but I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. You can actually get away with a lot of things as a foreigner because you can play "I'm the foreigner" card,
right?
And it's okay because the Japanese people are like, okay, you're not from here, you didn't know what you were doing, and it's okay. We'll let you pass, but just don't do it again. But if you're a Japanese person, they have a lot more higher expectations of what you're doing.
Oh, wow. I wish America was more like that. I feel like it's the opposite, where Americans are kind of like, oh, you got to be like us. And, so.
Yeah. the good thing about being an American is like, oh, you can be whoever you want to be, right?
Sure, that's true.
But that's the nice thing. That's, I guess, one of the staples of living in America is like, yeah, land of the free, home of the brave. Whereas Japan is like, okay, we're all organized and you have to adhere to these things and you have to be this way, which is kind of bad in the long run. We can talk about Japanese work culture, but that's a whole other topic that'll take a long time. But as far as comfortability goes, I think I do feel more comfortable being in Japan because I do know a lot more Japanese than I did back in 2013. So I feel more comfortable speaking it, but I don't feel as confident when I'm there speaking it.
Sure.
Because first of all, there's a lot of different dialects in Japan. Like Osaka, Kyoto have their own way of talking, their own different words. And I'm still like on the Tokyo dialect where it's like the quote unquote standard Japanese. So when you go to Japan, you think of like, oh, there's a certain way to say thank you, which is like arigato. There's a certain way to say hello, which is like depending on the time of the day. But in the Kansai area, they have what's called Kansai-ben. And then they have in Kyoto, in Kyoto and Osaka, there's a word called okini, which is the Kansai way of saying thank you. It's like, that's completely different than what I learned. So, when you're learning Japanese, they don't teach you specifically the dialects and the regional dialects. Funny story and some context. One of my friends, she's from southern Osaka, and the dialect there is very, very strong. So the equivalent would be in Japanese would be having a southern accent in America.
Okay.
So like if you go to the South in America and you hear someone talk with like a southern drawl, sometimes you don't know what they're saying. For me, visiting my friend's family in southern Osaka was like I was in a whole other world because they were speaking a whole other dialect of Japanese that I did not know. I actually met her grandparents, and of course they're like deep into that accent, and I was sitting there so confused because I understood some of the words they were saying, but a lot of it was the Kansai dialect, and I was like, oh my god, their accent is so strong. I don't know what's happening, but they're talking about me. I know that for sure, and I'm just smiling and nodding and trying to speak like regular Japanese, but they would respond in Kansai-ben, and I'm like, I don't know what she's saying.
Wow, that's cool. But I mean, yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Another fun fact about Osaka is it's known for its entertainers, and like a lot of comedians actually come out of Osaka. So on TV, when they're showcased on TV, for a lot of Japanese that speak the standard dialect, hearing Kansai-ben to them is like, oh, that's the funny language, or that's like the funny dialect. So when people speak with Kansai-ben accents, they're like, oh yeah, that they're from the area that has the comedians, or they're from the area that is where the comedians are from. So it's kind of interesting that the Kansai dialect has that notation, but
Right.
it's pretty cool all the same.
So when you say that they're a different dialect, is that like a whole different language on its own, or is it just kind of like it's just like a form of the language? Because you mentioned like it's similar to like just the American South or whatever, where they're still speaking English, but they just have like certain ways of saying things and certain phrases that they might say. Is it like that, or is it completely like a different dialect, like a different language on its own?
It's a little bit of both. So it depends on where you're from, and how you speak that language and how you use it. I'm sorry, how you use that dialect. So an example would be in standard Japanese, there's the word hontoni, which means really. But in Kansai-ben, it's honmaya, which is really, but it's also in that accent. And you could clearly see that there's different like phonetics and vowels and words that are different, ways that it could be used. So yeah, I mean, I personally love the Kansai dialect. I want to learn it, but it's difficult because I only know the basis of Japanese, but I want to branch out. But I need a teacher, to teach me that. So yeah, to answer your question, it is a little bit of both. Some people can just speak their dialect in a whole sentence using words that are different from actual Japanese, but I'm sorry, standard Japanese. But they will have like standard Japanese words like sparse throughout their sentences or what have you.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and different regions of Japan have their different dialects. Some of them stemming from, either the people that were there a long time ago or from the culture that was there a long time ago. It's crazy. But yeah, man. Is there anything that you've seen in the media that you've been like dying to do? Like maybe do the Mario Kart thing, or like go whiskey tasting, or see a specific museum? Is there like one thing if you could go to Japan right now and do, aside from the cafe you mentioned?
I think I would just like to see more of the natural sites, like go to a maybe like see Mount Fuji, or I watched recently a documentary about I mean, this is kind of dark, but the suicide forest, and
Aokigahara.
right. Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of a sad and dark type
Mm-hmm.
of thing, but I definitely think that like it's fascinating, and I'm into like some scary stuff. I know that like next month is October, so I have like a lot of like scary like stream stuff planned for my Twitch stream,
Mm-hmm.
so just things like that, like just discussing areas that have just sort of like this scary context to them. But uh, yeah, I mean, those are the types of things that I would like to see more of, more like natural sites. And are there any that you would recommend that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I would say go to Kyoto. Kyoto is known for being like one of the capitals of Japan way back in the day. It's got a lot of like temples. There's Kiyomizu-dera. There's also Ginkakuji, which is the golden temple, and then its opposite version, Kinkakuji, which is do I have those mixed up? There's a silver temple and a gold temple. I think Kinkakuji is the gold one and Ginkakuji is the silver one. Fun fact: Nintendo is based in Kyoto, and the games Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver are based on those temples. At
Oh
least
wow.
like certain aspects of I guess the color convention, but also the bird Ho-Oh is based on one of the deities that sits atop the Golden Temple. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
the historical stuff would also be really cool. That's something I didn't really get a chance to see much of. I went to
Yes,
Asakusa,
yes.
um, and that was awesome. But I'd just like to see more of that as
Oh,
well.
you'll love Kyoto then. Because it's got all of that plus more. Something really cool about Kyoto is that, like wearing yukatas, kimonos, and like stuff like that are very welcome in that city. Or it's not really welcome. I wouldn't say it's welcome because you could technically wear that anywhere, but it's more common to
Sure.
see people wearing that traditional garb because that's like the city
Yeah.
that is known for that. There's a street called Gion, and it's basically modeled after ancient Japan. So you'll see like tourists as well as locals wearing traditional outfits, just walking around, just chilling. It's funny because you'll see like a woman wearing a full kimono. She has like the full like makeup on, the white face with like the red lips and the pointy black eyebrows, and then she pulls out like an iPhone 10. You're like, okay, my immersion has been dispersed. But yeah, I think you'll really like Kyoto because it's got that historical flair. It's also got like the like the traditional Japan sense, but still being modern at the same time.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to see more of. As much as I love all the like the um the modern stuff to check out. That was what I kind of heavily uh, that was my most of my experience last time I went to Japan.
I see.
So I would like to go more into like a lot of that stuff, historical stuff, and uh, natural
Well, shit,
sites.
man, I'll take you. We'll go to Nara right after and get bitten by deer.
All right.
So really quick, you mentioned the suicide forest, and I have a spooky story for you.
Okay.
So I had a buddy in college who studied abroad in Japan. He's Japanese American, and it was always one of his dreams to just be in his home country because his parents are from there. And he had a friend who was like, hey, Shogo, his name is Shogo. My friend's name is Shogo, and he's like, Shogo, let's go to the suicide forest at the base of Mount Fuji. And my friend was like, hell no, I don't want to go there. Like, why would you want to go there? He's like, I want to hike around there. I think it's interesting. And then my friend Shogo was like, all right, I'll go with you because I don't want you to go by yourself. Because he was like, his friend was like, either I'm going to go there with or without you. So they both go there. They're hiking around, and there's a certain path you have to follow, because if you don't follow it, you'll get lost, because all the trees start looking the same, especially when the sun starts going down, and it just gets really, really dark. It gets dark fast because there's so many trees covering the sky. And so they started walking in. There's a sign that says Aokigahara Forest. Below it, it says, if you're feeling unwell, please call this number. It's basically like telling you your friends and family love you. Remember that before you go into the forest.
Right.
And my friend started getting a cold feeling. He was like, I don't know if we should go here. But his friend was like, no, we got to keep pushing on. I want to see what's inside. So he's like, all right, let's go. So they keep walking into the forest, and my friend stumbles upon this little toy. It's like a little T-Rex inside of a plastic ball. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, should I take this? And his friend's like, yeah, just bring it back to, the Lost and Found, because there's like there's a Lost and Found like building in front of the forest. So they keep going into the forest, and eventually they start finding like campsites, empty campsites, with like sleeping bags that are covered in dirt and dust. And my friend's friend just starts poking through the things, and Shogo's like, dude, like, what are you doing? And the other guy's like, I'm just checking it out. I want to see if these people like left anything good. He's like, dude, that's fucked up. These people probably aren't here anymore. Like, you shouldn't touch those things. He's like, all right.
Not just that, but they could be haunted, like you could be taking something that has like a spirit attached to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So my friend's friend is like, all right, cool. So they go past it and they go further, and then they see a campsite, but they also see like a string doll attached to a tree in front of the campsite. And they got this like shivering feeling down their spine. And he's like, okay, we got to turn back. It's 4 p.m. The sun's going down, and I just saw that, and this is fucking scary. So they start walking back, but it starts getting like darker and darker. So they're like kind of not sprinting, they're like jogging back. And my friend trips. He falls in a way that it, like, should have sprained his ankle, or like it should have hurt him in a really bad way. And he's like, fuck, like my leg hurts. And he's like, and then his friend's like, okay, it's okay. We'll go to the park station, and we'll recover, and we'll see if you're actually hurt. So they go there, and my friend pulls out his little T-Rex toy, and the right foot of the T-Rex toy is broken. The same exact foot that he tripped on and should have broken.
No way.
And he's like, fuck. This was like one of those sacrifice stones that like saved him. Like, he really believed that, and I believe him. And he looked at his friend. He's like, dude, look. He's like, yeah, it's just a T-Rex toy. He's like, no, the right foot is broken. That's the foot that I should have like sprained. That's the one that I should have broken. And then like they go up to the park rangers. They're like, look at this. And he told them the whole story. They're like, wow, that's really cool. He's like, yeah, can I keep this with you? So he like left it with them in the Lost and Found. And yeah, like to this day, I'm like, dude, that's such a trippy story, because it's like that little toy like took the fall for him, like literally.
Yeah, my God.
It's like, oh my.
It's a good thing you didn't keep it, honestly, because, well, I mean, maybe it was a good luck charm and everything, but honestly, to take something like that with you,
the way he explained it was like, it was his good luck charm, and the luck ran out. So if he kept it with him, it would have just cursed him.
Sure.
From that point on.
Jeez.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah. In the documentary that I watched about it, they talk about how like people will go to that forest, contemplating taking their own lives, and they'll have a ribbon.
Oh,
with
yes.
them. And yeah, it's basically like, because like you mentioned, it's really easy to get lost in there. And so what they'll do is they'll take the ribbon as sort of like their way of just in case they change their mind, they can find their way back out. And so technically, like, if you find a ribbon in that forest, you could just follow that ribbon and maybe you'll find somebody who just basically didn't take their way out. They ended their life. So
yeah,
it's
like a string they leave, right,
dark.
to like let them know how to get out.
Right.
Yeah, I think my friend mentioned that they found one of those and they just followed it to a campsite, and then they were like, "This is fucking scary."
Yeah. Fascinating, but very
freaky
spooky.
shit, dude. Like, seriously. Damn. Man, dude. That's crazy. It's been fun chatting with you about Japan. Were there any other things you want to talk about? We've been going for like 2 hours now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we don't want to go too long. I know, because we could probably go on for a lot longer if we wanted to, dive deeper into everything. But
yeah, I feel like I've talked too much.
No, you're good, bro. Because obviously you have way more stories, and it's fascinating to hear from like the stuff that you've been through. Because that's something that I think I've been interested in chatting with you about for a long time, since we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
Now, but we never really got to chat about this stuff.
And now we can. There's a lot more that I do want to talk to you about, but I'll save it for when we're in person.
Sure.
But if you'd like to follow this podcast, go to www.Downtime.Live. You can click on the contact button to leave us a comment or question. You can also email us the old-fashioned way at contact@Downtime.Live to send us a question or comment. You can join our Discord on our website if you click the community button, but you can also find a link to our Discord in the description of wherever this podcast is hosted. Speaking of that, we are hosted on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, a bunch of platforms. You can leave a comment on any of the platforms that comments are available on, and we will read it on the podcast. We have a Twitter, we have a Steam group, and if you would like to follow DJ Bibinkahan, you can go to twitch.tv/DJ Bibinkahan. That's DJ BIBINKAK. Sorry, KAHAN. I almost got it. You can also follow him on Instagram and Twitter under the name @DJ Bibinkahan. Again, that's DJ BIBINKAHAN. You can also listen to him on the Bastos Podcast. That happens. Do you guys record every Sunday, or is it like every 2 weeks?
No, it's once a month.
Got it. Sorry about that. Once a month. A link to the Bastos Podcast on Spotify will be in the description of wherever this podcast is hosted. Anything you want to add about yourself, DJB?
Well, yeah, just fingers crossed. It's been difficult trying to book our next guest for the Bastos Podcast, but so far we have him scheduled, and hopefully it falls through. It's going to be Rex Neveready.
Awesome.
OG Bastos comedian for the next Bastos Podcast.
Oh.
So, yeah.
There you go.
And and if y'all are interested to come through on my Twitch stream, just I like discussing about anything regardless of what I'm playing. So if you guys want to talk more about like Japan or just Twitch stuff, just mention it in chat and we'll have a discussion. So and like I did mention, for next month is October. A lot of Twitch streamers like to do this, and so I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of like scary games in the month of October. I have a stream that I like to do with my wifey, and we just kind of react to paranormal videos that are on YouTube, supposedly real ghost spottings and stuff like that. So, yeah,
I will be watching that one with one eye open. I'm gonna be scared the whole time. Yeah, he also sings in Japanese, guys. So that's also cool.
All right.
No, you do a good job. You do a really, really good job, and I enjoy it. Every time you sing in Japanese, I smile, dude. It's awesome.
All right, I appreciate
that. Yeah, guys. Yeah, man. So everyone, thanks for listening to podcast Sidequest, episode 145. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you guys next time.
Later, guys.